Hello, I am Mario 8th and welcome to Super Mario Bros. In Review, the show where I will be reviewing all 18 Super Mario Bros. Platformers and ranking them to find the ultimate Super Mario game. To make this list of 18, I had to make some exclusions. The arcade games Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., while both great arcade games, are not being included. I think most can agree that Mario as a platforming series started with Super Mario Bros., and the arcade games being included would just muddy the waters. I am also excluding Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. While being a numbered sequel to Mario World, I consider it a Yoshi game. In a similar vein, Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 would also be considered a Wario game. This leaves the final list as Super Mario Bros. 1, 2 The Lost Levels, 2 USA, 3 World, Land, Land 2, 64, Sunshine, Galaxy 1 and 2, 3D Land, 3D World, Odyssey, and the new Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, Wii, and U. Over the course of this series, I will be visiting each in chronological order and sorting them in either a 2D Mario list or a 3D Mario list. Then once all 18 have been completed, we will merge the two lists to see which game is truly, mathematically, the best. And of course, first we will be starting with Super Mario Bros., the OG, the one that cemented Nintendo into stardom. Originally published on the Famicom in September of 1985, SMB launched sometime later that year on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the rest is history. Super Mario Bros. Was the brainchild of the one, the only, Shigeru Miyamoto, dad of Mario and Luigi. The soundtrack was done by Koji Kondo, the best composer in the business, and along with only 4 other developers, they managed to release one of the most pivotal games ever. After the debacle that was E.T. for the Atari 2600, most of the American public had lost faith in console video games, in what is now dubbed the video game crash of '83. Consoles were clearly not cutting it, long live the arcade. Nintendo, on the other hand, wanted a slice of that cake. What was then a long-running toy company, Nintendo, branched into the video game market. After putting out a few different arcade games, Donkey Kong really put Nintendo on the map. Then with games like the Donkey Kong sequels and Mario Bros. Bringing even further success, it was time to hit the home market once again. Nintendo launched the Famicom home computer in Japan in 1983, along with some arcade ports to middling success. Yet the launch of the NES in the States would be harder still due to the aforementioned E.T. debacle. To curb the view on video games, Nintendo marketed the NES more as a toy, using Rob to really sell that premise. And to really seal the deal, Nintendo promised that games on the NES would be held to a much higher standard than those on the Atari, as marked by the Nintendo seal of approval. But the Nintendo Entertainment System's success was all but solidified with the release of Super Mario Bros. Now here's where I have to admit a couple of things. Super Mario Bros. Is not my favorite Mario game, not by a long shot, and I am very bad at it. I first played it on the Wii Virtual Console, rest in peace Sweet Prince, and have really only played it a handful of times since. Of course I've beaten it, a couple times on Wii and a couple more on the Switch, but my nostalgia for this series comes from, really, any other entry. But I strive to look past my personal prejudices, look past my poor skill level, and review this game as it is. So what is Super Mario Bros? Mario, or originally Jumpman, started out as just a lowly carpenter in the Donkey Kong arcade game. Gaining a new name and a brother, Mario and Luigi switched to the plumbing business in the Mario Bros. Arcade game. Sometime during the events of Mario Bros., the duo found themselves warped to the Mushroom Kingdom, land of Princess Toadstool and the Toad Folk, as well as, and I'm quoting here, the Koopa, a tribe of turtles famous for their black magic. See, the evil King Koopa, or as we now know him, King Bowser, has turned the poor denizens of the Mushroom Kingdom into brown bricks, and captured 7 of them within his castles. The only person who can revive the Toads is Princess Toadstool, who has, gasp, been captured. Now Mario and sometimes Luigi must travel the land to rescue her. Yeah, the original instruction booklet had some weird writing, but the main point is simple. Princess captured, Plumber goes to save her, Plumber beats the Koopa and saves the day. I'll be saying this a lot throughout this in review. The Super Mario series is not and has never truly been about the story though. Where it shines is in gameplay, and gameplay is what cemented Super Mario Bros. As an all-time classic. It just hasn't aged the best. In Super Mario Bros., the titular bros are the player characters. Player 1 plays as Mario, 2 as Luigi. Mario can run left or right, jump to stomp on baddies, or get atop platformers, and smash blocks with his hand or head maybe. If a block doesn't explode, it'll either contain coins or an item. Getting 100 coins makes an extra guy. Getting a mushroom makes Mario Super Mario and he gets taller. The Fire Flower allows Mario to shoot a couple of fireballs, the Starman makes Mario invincible for a short time, and the 1-Up Mushroom also gives an extra guy, a new man. But getting hit makes Mario shrink back, and getting hit while small kills the guy, losing one of the hard-earned extra men. Mario runs or swims to the right to progress the level, hopping on blocks and big shrooms to either stomp or avoid the various enemies. As he runs to the right, the screen does get locked, so anything missed gets blocked off, and after reaching the end there is a flagpole that Mario touches to finish the level and move on to the next. Throughout each level are a few secrets to be found. There are hidden and invisible blocks that usually reward a one-man. In lieu of coins or items, sometimes a block will sprout vines that lead to a hidden coin area, and occasionally pressing down on a pipe can transport Mario to an underground area. These usually contain coins but can sometimes be a short underwater level too. The exit then spits Mario out closer to the flagpole. Most notoriously, of course, are the warp zones. On certain underground levels, if Mario jumps up and around the pipe that brings him to the end of the level, he's brought into a special warp zone that'll allow him to skip to a future stage. The baddies mainly consist of Goombas, Koopas, and Piranha Plants, with later levels introducing Spinies, Buzzy Beetles, and Hammer Bros. Water levels have Cheep Cheeps and Bloopers, and castle levels have Podoboos, Fire Bars, and a boss encounter with the King Koopa. Actually, the first 7 worlds have a fake version of Bowser. If defeated with fireballs, the minion loses their Bowser disguise and falls into the lava below. But without a Fire Flower, all the bosses require Mario to either jump over or run under the king and touch an axe behind him, cutting the bridge and dropping Bowser below. And every time I have to beat him, I usually just cross my fingers, close my eyes, and run because I am terrible at avoiding his attacks, especially when he starts throwing hammers. After beating the first 7 bosses, a Toad-capped T lets Mario know the princess is further along still, with the final encounter allowing Mario to rescue her for real. It feels a little silly explaining how Super Mario Bros. Plays, since pretty much every platformer after uses some variation of this formula. But I really think it's important to take in this game as it was at its release. Before Super Mario Bros., the idea of a scrolling level was unheard of. How Mario controlled was groundbreaking, and every single level is a masterclass in level design. A lot has been written about how level 1-1 is a perfect intro level. It introduces the player to jumping on enemies, getting items from blocks, hidden blocks, warp pipes, and bottomless pits. Each level after uses all these aspects as well as throwing in new enemy and level types here or there. The difficulty curve is perfect, with every level getting harder and harder until Mario is navigating Hammer Bros with no power-up in a mad rush to get to Big Bad's castle in World 8. It's truly amazing how much they were able to fit into such a small game. The levels are also innovative, constantly iterating on the very few included mechanics. These iterations don't get old, each level is only a couple minutes long, and by the time some mechanic is brought back, it returns in a completely different context. One of my personal favorite iterations are the castles with varying paths. Mario needs to loop through a short area until the correct route is taken. It's such a clever way to add a slight challenge. And here's the part where I admit that I cheated. I started out playing normal, I was bad, I died like twice on stage 1-1, but I kept trekking. I got up to World 6 before I game overed. Then I used warp zones to get back and got another game over. But this time I started using the rewind function to place me at the start of the level again. I understand my own limits, and try as I might, I'm never going to be that great at Super Mario Bros. And the time it would take for me to get at least good enough to beat it in one go, I'd rather spend that time playing games I like a little more. Luckily, I only had to rewind a couple of times, at least until 8-4. I had to use it a lot in 8-4. It's just so long. There's no good markings to know I was going the correct way, and my god, am I bad at this video game. I simply cannot wrap my head around the physics. Something about Mario's momentum is endlessly frustrating to me. It takes too long to start moving, there's almost no aerial control, hopping on enemies doesn't give Mario enough of a boost. I won't say any of this is bad per se, but platformers have had a decade to make these mechanics feel so much better, and I can't help but wish for this level of polish while playing SMB. And while I'm airing grievances, not being able to run to the left is a shame, albeit understandable for the time. With all of that being said, Super Mario Bros. For the Famicom and NES is a great game for its time. It is truly groundbreaking. So many games have modeled itself off of it, and all of its strengths made for a great foundation for all Mario games to come. But will its solid foundation be able to stand against years of iteration? For now, I'll be ranking the 2D and 3D games separately, so currently Super Mario Bros. Is number 1 of the 11 2D platformers. How long will it stay there? We will see. But for now, it's time to play Super Mario Bros. 2 Japan, or The Lost Levels here in the States. Originally released in Japan in June of 1986, it didn't arrive overseas until it was remade and released in the Super Mario Bros. All-Stars collection in 1993 for the Super Nintendo. And even then, the version I played wasn't officially released until 2007 when it came out on the Wii Virtual Console. But why? Why did Nintendo hide this game for so long? Well, after the success of the original Super Mario Bros., Miyamoto turned his focus towards his next big venture, The Legend of Zelda. But Super Mario Bros. Was a huge success, and making a sequel was the obvious choice for Nintendo. As such, Takashi Tezuka stepped up as lead director. Now, not much is known about the full development of SMB2, but Tezuka has been quoted as saying that given Japan's familiarity with the original, the development team wanted to make the sequel harder, to keep the audience from growing bored. And, well, they certainly did that. I walked into The Lost Levels knowing I wouldn't like it. I knew it was hard, and I remember online personalities complaining about how unfair it was. I'd only ever played it once. I got through a few levels on the Wii and put it down until, well, just right now. And you know what? I think I was wrong. But first, let's go through the story of Super Mario Bros. 2. King Bowser has stolen Princess Peach and is up to the Mario Bros. To save her. They do, the end. Yep. Pretty much the same as the first, and it isn't the only thing that is borrowed from the original. Everything is pretty much the same with a few tweaks here or there. The music is the same, but with an added ending theme after rescuing Peach. The sound effects are the same, but with an added sliding sound. The sprites are largely the same, but many have been updated somewhat nicely. Mushrooms now have little happy eyes, and clouds and bushes are no longer the same recolored sprite. Mobility, though, is probably the biggest difference. Mario controls the same, but he now bounces off enemies much higher. Luigi, on the other hand, jumps much higher than his bro and slides further when stopping. It was actually really fascinating to see how Luigi's physics differentiation started in 2 The Lost Levels. I'd always assumed they got it from 2 USA. In fact, so many changes they added have permeated throughout the rest of the series. Attributes I had attributed to SMB3 originated with 2 The Lost Levels, and it's wild that the Mario team knew what they wanted to do so early on. That being said, I still do not like how these first 2 games control as a whole. I still want more aerial control, and I still want to start moving quicker. But enough about physics, how does the actual game shape up? Well, poorly. True to their word, the game is hard, but not in a fun way. Too many levels rely on leaps of faith where I just cannot see the platform I'm trying to land on, cannot see Mario himself, or by managing to find a block to get to the correct path. And the game actively disincentivizes the type of exploration that the first rewards. Hitting a block only to have a poison mushroom pop out sucks. And jumping over a flagpole only to find a warp zone that takes Mario back to level 1-1 really sucks. There were multiple areas where if I had taken a different path, it'd just have been an instant loss. On one level, I was supposed to get to an area, find a hidden block that was just high enough it was a pain to jump on, and then land on it with enough momentum to get atop a pipe further ahead. And this was in like World 1. Too much of the game relied on cheap tricks and not enough on actually challenging platforming. But as I said earlier, I didn't hate it, so why? Well, it's 2 reasons. One, whenever the game did have good challenging level design, it was fun. Really fun. I was flying through levels, dodging Hammer Bros, leaping over spinies, hitting the flagpole, and breathing out a sigh of relief. And 2, whenever I got to something I deemed cheap, I used the Switch's rewind feature to redo that area. So yeah, I cheated, and I cheated a lot, but you know what, it made the game playable, even with the new continue feature which allowed Mario to start at the beginning of a world after getting a game over. I probably shaved an hour off of my playtime by rewinding, and it was worth it. But as a whole, it was all fun. A good majority of the levels were a good challenge, the physics were a big improvement over the original, and the new sprites made the game feel at least a little new. But even in the good levels, there's usually at least one bad jump, one bad puzzle, one silly flying blooper placement. I had thought about calling my shot and placing this dead last 18th place, and I'm still mostly confident it's going to land there anyway, but I actually had a good time. So today the ranking is now 2 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels and 1 Super Mario Bros. And with that, I've passed what was probably my biggest hurdle with this in review, and I am so excited to get to playing the rest of this series. Up next, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. Mario 2 originally released in 1998 in the States, 89 in PAL regions, and didn't arrive in Japan until Mario All-Stars, where it was labeled as Super Mario USA. A real big inverse with how Japan's Mario 2 was released worldwide. Much debate has occurred over this particular title, specifically as to whether or not it truly counts as a Mario game. This debate is very silly, it is very clearly a Mario game in most ways. See, the debate stems from how SMB2 was developed. After the Japanese SMB2 was deemed too hard for American audiences, the 1987 game Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic was reskinned and reworked to have more Mario-centric characters and power-ups. This meant that Mario and Luigi were added, and Princess Toadstool and Toad became playable for the first time, and items like mushrooms and stars were mapped to pre-existing power-ups. But the base game remained mostly the same, hence the debate. The major twist being, early on in the development of Doki Doki Panic, the game was meant to be a Super Mario Bros.-esque platformer and had close guidance from Shigeru Miyamoto. Refitting the game to be SMB2 was almost going back to its roots, if I stretch the definition of going back to its roots a little. Well anyway, that's a brief history on Super Mario Bros. 2. I never played this version as a kid, I don't think I even bought it on the Wii Virtual Console. My main experience is with the vastly improved Game Boy Advance port, which itself was based off the Mario All-Stars version. The All-Stars version already had a more lenient save mechanic, and the GBA version added collectible Yoshi eggs throughout each level after beating the game once. And I played the hell out of that cartridge as a kid. It was the first Mario game to be released under the Super Mario Advance collection, and it also included a really great version of the original Mario Bros. Arcade game. Heck, I might have even spent more time playing Mario Bros. Than Mario 2, but I fell in love with the entire package. After the release of Nintendo Switch Online is when I finally played through the All-Stars version, and I had a good time with that as well. Unfortunately, after getting used to all the quality of life advancements from later iterations, the original NES version didn't hold up as well as I had hoped. Now surprisingly, SMB2 actually has some sort of story. Mario has dreamt that the inhabitants of the Dream World Subcon are being ruled by the evil Frogman Wart. After waking up, the 4 playable characters find the entrance to this dream world near their picnic site. They, do the game and beat Wart, only to find the whole thing was still just Mario's dream. I mean, yeah, it's not much of a story, but it's far more than its predecessors, and the whole thing has a very pro-vegetable agenda, which I'm all here for. In the game, Mario, Luigi, Toadstool, and Toad all control mostly the same. They each run, jump, pick up items or enemies, and throw them. SMB2 also added a crouch jump, which is triggered by jumping after the character crouches for a while. What differentiates them is their stats. Toad is faster, Luigi jumps higher, Toadstool floats for a short distance, and Mario is the well-rounded one. This is not only noticeable from a gameplay perspective, but these attributes have followed these characters throughout the entire series. Another point in the "this is clearly a true Mario game" camp. Each level is separated into sections, both with vertical and horizontal areas. The chosen hero must run through, avoiding or grabbing baddies like the Shy Guys, Ninjas, Bob-ombs, or Pokies, usually beating Birdo at the end and climbing into an eagle's mouth to continue on to the next level. Of course, those enemies, sans the eagle mouth, are the main ones who went on to become Mario mainstays, but a whole cast of other baddies populate this dream world. There's Tweeters, Ostros, Flurries, or the most infamous, the dreaded Phanto. Of course, most are defeated in largely the same way. The player character picks up something and throws it at him. This is a point in the Mario 2 USA is not a Mario game camp. Pretty much every other game in the series features jumping as an attack mechanism. In Mario 2, all the enemies can be stood on, and while the player is standing on them, most can be physically picked up and thrown at others. This is the main way to attack, by picking vegetables or grabbing enemies and throwing them. And if timed well, a single thing can bounce off of multiple baddies, defeating them all in one go. This is also how hearts are earned, kill enough enemies to refill the player's HP. And while other Mario games feature picking up stuff and throwing it, it is weird that every enemy can be stood on. Except for the main bosses, that is. Every final level features a major boss that must be hit multiple times to be defeated, and the bosses are pretty neat. Most throw a thing at the player that the player must then throw back, but each has a really nice twist to it. Except for Fry Guy, that guy sucks. I mean, cool boss, but really hard. And big shout out to the final boss, Wart, the frog who hates vegetables so much it hurts to eat them, and who made his first and final appearance in Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. Rip to a real one. As far as things to be picked up, most spots on the ground are some form of vegetable, usually turnips with the occasional variant like pumpkins. There are a few hidden one-ups, but are few and far in between. In the later levels the game starts getting tricky, with the occasional bomb being plucked out that needs to be thrown away immediately lest the player get blown up. Another rare pluck are Koopa shells, which roll forward, defeating anything in their wake, at least until they hit a wall. Throughout each level there are cherries simply floating in the air. These give an invincibility star once enough are collected. Lastly, potions can be found, which when thrown on the ground, transport the player into a mirror world. Here, any unplucked plants turn into coins, and in specific spots, mushrooms spawn, which when grabbed give the player an extra hit point for the duration of the level. The whole game feels like a real adventure. One touch I really enjoyed was how every level flows into one another. When one ends underground, the next starts by climbing back to the surface. Plus, each level was excellently designed. One I particularly enjoy had Mario travel all the way to the right, then go underground, and head back to the left to get to the goal. And every level has its own twists and turns. Even in the starting level, the player starts falling through a vertical section, heading to the right in a horizontal section, entering a building and climbing up another vertical section, then beating Birdo to get her pondering orb to exit through the eagle. Some have the player excavating pyramids, exploring buildings, skating over frozen lakes, flying high in the sky. There are so many set pieces, it was a joy to explore them all. And there's actually only 7 worlds, each with 3 levels, the 7th only having 2. It's only notable due to how pretty much every other Mario game has landed on 8 worlds being the default. The length doesn't take a hit though, since each level is much longer than its predecessors. Coming off of the original Super Mario Bros. With 3 worlds so close ahead, I couldn't help but feel like there were a few things off with SMB2. Throwing items never had the exact angle that I expected, and platforming was never as precise as in the originals. A lot of this came from using Mario. Peach or Luigi are much better characters, but I still found myself getting caught in the top of a tile of a cactus or getting hit by an enemy I was sure I was above. And it doesn't help that the character sprite seems to always be 2 tiles tall unless ducking. I'd think that when the character only has 1 HP and physically shrinks, that they'd have a smaller hitbox. This is not the case. It was also a lot harder than I remembered. I ran out of continues around World 4 on my first attempt, and while I cleared that level on the second playthrough, by the time I got to my next game over, I was a little over it and started using the Switch's rewind feature. This was also pressured by how difficult it is to get extra lives. The coins found in the mirror worlds are used after each level to play a slot machine. Getting the correct combo is rewarded with lives. I suck at it. Any life I get is pure happenstance and exceedingly frustrating. I have landed on the strategy of just mashing the A button, and it actually works more than one would think. But the 1-ups in the level are rare and hard to find, so getting lucky with a slot machine is the main way to not get game overs. And with only 3 continues on top of that, it's a tough one. Not as tough as the Japanese Mario 2, but tough regardless. And I cannot finish this review without mentioning the music. Koji Kondo hit it out of the park with some of the best music in the series. The character select music is one of the best songs in Mario history, and each level track is nearly as excellent. So, Super Mario Bros. 2. It's a really good game, and if I was looking at either the All-Stars or the GBA versions, I'd like it even more, but the original has just a bit too many flaws. The life system isn't great, the controls are not as precise as I'd like my platformers to be. Even though I'm not good at the original Super Mario Bros., I think I prefer its controls to 2's. With that being said though, it is still clearly a better game than Japan's Super Mario Bros. 2. So my current ranking of 2D Super Mario Bros. Platformer stands at number 3 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 2 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, and 1 Super Mario Bros. At least for now. I wrote this a year before recording, and in that time I replayed Super Mario Bros. 2 to make sure my thoughts were the same. And let's just say when I eventually merge the 2D and 3D lists, my current rankings may get shuffled a bit. Anyway, oh boy am I excited for this next one. The all-time classic, for many people the best 2D Mario game ever, the first Mario game to have been included in a feature Hollywood film, Super Mario Bros. 3, originally released in 1988 in Japan and hit the US and Europe markets in 90 and 91 respectively. And really, what more needs to be said about Mario Bros. 3? It is one of the best-selling NES games, it continues to be lauded as one of the best Mario games, some even describe it as one of the best games ever. And it was also in the feature film The Wizard, which I never saw and isn't really relevant other than to show that Nintendo put a lot of marketing behind the game. As was the case with Mario Bros. 2 USA, I first played Mario 3 as Mario Advanced 4. In this case, the Advanced version didn't change much, just cleaned up a lot of the sprites from the All-Stars version, but the gameplay remained largely the same. And I played a bunch of Mario 3. I never loved it quite as much as its sequel, but I can't deny how fun this collection of levels is. I believe I did repurchase it for Nintendo Wii and have played it a couple times on the Switch too. Directed once again by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, they were joined by a small team including the GOAT Koji Kondo to really develop a worthy sequel to the Mario franchise, with a goal to iterate and improve every aspect of the originals. Nintendo managed to achieve this goal with flying colors, fitting more levels, better music, and better graphics all on the same tiny cartridge that held the original. In Super Mario Bros. 3, Mario and Luigi are sent out on yet another quest to defeat Bowser, the king of the Koopas. This time around, old Koopa has sent the Koopalings, his 7, children? Adoptive, I guess, to transform various kings around the land into animals, and it is up to our favorite bros to stop them. But, after defeating the 7th Koopaling, Bowser captures Princess Toadstool. Again. So the bros go and rescue her. She jokes about the princess being in another castle. The end. And as I alluded before, Super Mario Bros. 3 is amazing. Just a truly wonderful game. This is where Nintendo perfected the controls. Every jump, every bounce off an enemy, every item is perfectly balanced and fine-tuned. I have the exact amount of control over Mario as I want. Each level consists of various platforms and enemies for Mario to jump under, over, or onto. Now with a much wider array of items to use. Mushrooms and fire flowers make their return with the now iconic raccoon tail allowing for short flights and hovering. And there are even rarer items, such as the Tanuki suit that allows Mario to turn into a statue as well as fly, the frog suit which adds greater mobility underwater, and the hammer suit which allows Mario to emulate the dastardly Hammer Bros. Speaking of Hammer Bros, they are back and much easier than ever, as well as a whole host of new enemies to torment the brothers. Each level has them defeating or avoiding these enemies and usually collecting a mushroom, flower, or star card at the end. 3 cards result in an extra life, but if Mario manages to get 3 matching cards, he gets more lives in return. A couple of fortress levels are found per world and are patrolled by the dastardly Boom Boom, and each of the king's castles are guarded by one of the 7 Koopalings in their airship. These bosses are on the meh side of things. Boom Boom couldn't be easier, just jump on him 3 times. With a little practice, I usually get him before he can even move. The Koopalings are a bit tougher, especially the ones who spawn a whole bunch of projectiles, but they're still on the easy side. My favorite boss has to be Bowser, who Mario needs to goad into smashing the ground from underneath them until the final block is destroyed and Bowser falls into the depths below. It's a really fun twist to the gameplay that up to this point has just been jump on a thing 3 times. Each and every level is great, creatively using its myriad platforms and enemies in new and unique ways throughout the game's runtime. And now each level is selected by navigating an overworld map, allowing each playthrough to be unique. The levels start out as traditional Mario levels, but this time Mario is able to run forward and backward to his heart's content. And with the new flying abilities, there are often secrets just above the camera line. Early on, these secrets net coins, extra lives, or the elusive Tanuki suit. But in certain harder levels, Mario needs to fly to the ceiling to find the right pipe to actually beat the level. Certain levels become straight up mazes, with Mario needing to navigate the correct sequence of pipes and doors, and this isn't even saved for the final stage like in Mario 1. Mario 3 also introduced auto-scrolling levels, and depending on who is asked, this is either a great thing or the worst thing ever. I personally like them. It makes me practice patience and hone my avoidance skills, especially around the fire chomps that spit out fire, then blow up. Where Mario 1 had a few really good ideas and then remixed them to make a great game, Mario 3 chooses a tactic where it has just a bunch of really good ideas, and uses them all only once. Whether it's avoiding an angry sun while jumping over tornadoes, hopping in a Karibo's boot and running over Bunchors, finding a frog suit just in time to glide around Big Bertha, avoiding surprisingly fast boos, all of these events are so memorable and then tossed out for the next great idea. And as each new great idea is introduced, the game gets progressively harder. Yeah, the sun is shocking at first, but it's not actually hard to avoid. But slipping and sliding on the ice in World 6 makes things harder, then navigating the Munchors and the pipe mazes is even more so, and especially the auto-scrolling levels before Bowser's Castle are a real challenge. And for the real experts, or I guess people who just know where they are, a few levels contain a secret flute, which when played warps the plumber to a later world. But the levels aren't the only thing on the map. Now there are various shops too. A spinning block puzzle that nets extra lives, an item shop that nets items, and the occasional match game dot the overworld to help the plumbers. Patrolling enemies that can move to an open space dot the overworld to block the plumbers until they're defeated. There are even some secrets to be found. A boat in a certain section takes the plumber to a little island that looks like Japan, or the hammer item can be used to break rocks to reach pipes to transport them across the world map. And if a level is too hard, the cloud item lets the plumber skip it, but only once. Each level is themed to match the world it's in. The maps are fun to explore and each have their own unique piece of music. Here is the obligatory section where I mentioned Koji Kondo makes excellent music and once again outperformed himself. As a package, Super Mario Bros. 3 feels unique and fun throughout, like Mario and Luigi are going on a true adventure. While I don't play this game as often as some other Mario entries, it is in my top 5 most played for sure. I originally had the Game Boy Advance port, but with the Wii and the Switch, I go back to playing the NES version every few years, and I love it. I've always loved it. And really, what's not to love? Every level is great, the difficulty curve is perfect, the music never gets old. I don't even have to think about this one. My new 2D Mario Bros. Platformers ranking is 4 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 3 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 2 Super Mario Bros. and 1 Super Mario Bros. 3. And now I'm entering uncharted waters. I grew up with the Game Boy Advance, not the original. And while I've heard a lot of surprisingly good things about this next title, this will be the first time I'm experiencing it myself. I'm very excited to play Super Mario Land for the Nintendo Game Boy. Land was originally released in Japan and the US in 1989, with the release only separated by a few months. It was the first Mario game to not be directed by Mario's dad, Miyamoto. Well, second if you include Mario 2 USA. Instead being directed by Satoru Okada and produced by Gunpei Yokoi. And it came out to very good reception. At the time, people loved the condensed Mario experience on this newfangled handheld device, so much so that it sold over 18 million copies, even more than Mario 3 managed. This was the first time I'd ever played Super Mario Land, and well, it was still Mario. I didn't know much about it going in. I knew Daisy was in it, it took place in a desert, belt, leather belt, and this weird little alien guy was in it. But despite telling myself multiple times that I was going to buy it off the Nintendo 3DS eShop, ripped to a real one, it took until now for me to finally bite the bullet. Speaking of this weird little alien guy, his name is Tatanga and he's taken over Sarasaland, brainwashed its inhabitants, and captured Princess Daisy as his bride. Hearing of her plight, it's up to Mario to run, jump, pilot a submarine, and fly a plane to save the day. He blows up Tatanga, rescues Daisy, and they both take off in a fighter jet. And this game is weird. The first thing I noticed was how the physics felt different. Mario runs and jumps like normal, but if he walks off a ledge, he falls like a brick. Where if he jumps off, there's much more aerial control and his descent is much slower. The hitboxes are a little wonky too. Landing on Koopas always felt like a gamble. And then the Koopa shell explodes. What the heck was that? In fact, a lot of the enemies are strange. I'm fighting jumping seahorses that shoot at me one level, Mogwai heads the next. And aside from the Mogwai heads in Odyssey, none of the enemies introduced in Mario Land ever made a return. Aside from the physics, the gameplay is very straightforward original Super Mario Bros. Mario runs to the right, can't go back, eats a mushroom to grow to Super Mario, grabs a flower to throw a bouncy ball, collects 100 coins to gain an extra life. There are 1-ups, but they're hearts this time around, not mushrooms. And at the end of each level, in lieu of a flagpole, there's a tower. Solving a platforming puzzle to get to the top allows Mario to play a life-getting minigame. Unless Mario's at his 3rd level of each world, then he fights a unique boss, and after defeating them, finds Daisy. Well, a common enemy disguised as Daisy. Oh, Daisy! The second thing I noticed was suddenly I'm in a submarine and I'm playing a shooter. It's not a particularly great shooter, but for early Game Boy it wasn't bad. I just really wasn't expecting it, and it was a nice change of pace. The next shooter level has Mario in a plane, but the gameplay is the same. Then he fights the boss, Tatonga suddenly shows up right after, and then the game is over. I was honestly shocked when I realized there were only 12 levels in the game. 4 worlds of 3 levels each. I get it, it's on a Game Boy after all, but still. I beat it for the first time in less than an hour. It was so short I almost felt like I needed to play it again. And I did. It only took 30 minutes that time. The third thing I noticed was the off level design. I won't say each of the levels are bad, but they do feel like they're missing something. Thematically they're great, it's fun seeing the Mogwai statues or pyramids in the background, and the team made some really unique enemies to match the settings. But at a certain point in each level, I noticed the platform patterns were repeating. The same ledge with a block appeared like 3 times in a level, just with an enemy placed in a slightly different place. I'm guessing this was a limitation of the hardware back then, but it did feel unoriginal seeing the same stuff over and over. One plus I'll give them though, while some of the levels felt actually a bit long, the game is super forgiving with checkpoints. Much of that similar looking architecture is where Mario respawns, which both helps and hinders the repetition problem. The final thing I noticed was, aside from the very strange can-can riff that plays during the star power-up, all the music is really good. Hip Tanaka did a wonderful job. I especially liked the end credits theme. Super Mario Land is weird. It's a little easy, a little short, has very weird enemies, and the physics took a bit to get used to. But it's not bad, just different. And honestly, I'm glad I was finally able to experience it myself. But I don't think I'm gonna go back to it anytime soon. It's not a bad game, it's not especially cruel like the Lost Levels, but I don't see myself playing it before Mario USA. My new ranking for 2D Mario games is 5 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 4 Super Mario Land, 3 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 2 Super Mario Bros. And 1 Super Mario Bros. 3. I've also never played Mario Land 2, and I'm very excited to see what improvements it made to the handheld line of games. But we have to wait a bit to get there, because first I finally get to play the Super Nintendo classic, Super Mario World, the best Mario game ever. Wait, forget I said that, I mean Super Mario World, originally released for the Super Famicom in 1990, was released a year later for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in the States, and another year later for PAL regions. And much like Mario 3, it went on to become widely acclaimed, receiving praises such as Greatest Game of All Time, and the Best-Selling SNES Game. Being a pack-in for the Super Nintendo though, that last one's a bit of a cheat. Regardless, the game came out to nearly unanimous praise, with Miyamoto himself even citing it as his personal favorite. But a war rages on within the community whether Super Mario World or Super Mario Bros. 3 is truly the best 2D platformer. Today I will end this war once and for all. Super Mario World was developed alongside the Super Famicom, making the development a hurdle for the dev team. The game was directed by Takashi Tezuka, produced by Shigeru Miyamoto, with the soundtrack once again by the absolute legend Koji Kondo. While Tezuka was the director, the game was still largely a child of Miyamoto. During development, the team wanted to create something that felt truly new. Even after porting Mario 3 to the SNES, they still felt more changes needed to be made to feel next-gen. This led to much more expansive levels, an overworld map with branching paths, and the addition of Yoshi, Mario's dinosaur friend that Miyamoto wanted since the original. Now, I haven't been hiding my bias too well, but I have an extensive history with Mario World. It was the first video game I ever played. On my dad's old SNES he never touched, my brother and I played the game over and over and over, and to this day I still play it at least once a year. I've bought this game on the Wii, on the Wii U, on the new Nintendo 3DS XL, on the Game Boy Advance, on the Super Nintendo Mini, and I've played it on the Nintendo Switch Online. But don't worry, I will do my best to cast aside my nostalgia and rank this game accordingly. Right. Super Mario World is the direct sequel to Super Mario Bros. 3, both in development and narrative. The game takes place after Mario and/or Luigi have defeated Bowser and rescued Princess Toadstool. Tired from the adventure, the trio travel to Dinosaur Land for a nice vacation. As it turns out, Bowser crash-landed on that very same island and scooped up the princess as soon as the brothers turned their back. Now it's up to Mario, Luigi, and their newfound friend Yoshi to travel the islands, rescue Yoshi's friends, and save the princess. Once all 7 trapped Yoshis are in hand, the brothers defeat the evil King Koopa, and Mario, Luigi, Toadstool, and all the Yoshis all have a nice vacation. And the gameplay, oh the gameplay. While Mario 3 made great improvements to the physics engine, Mario World perfected it. From the speed it takes to start running, to jumping off multiple enemies in a row, everything controls exactly how I want it to control. Mario's moveset has also been updated. He now has a spin jump that allows him to bounce off hazards that would usually hurt, and to break through certain blocks. It of course helps that every level is wonderfully designed. The improved processing of the new console allowed for much larger levels than before, with most of them now including a halfway checkpoint. The levels also now focus on both horizontal and vertical levels, with multiple exits hidden in every red colored level and most ghost houses. These exits can lead to different paths, Star World entrances, and sometimes back to the level just completed, making Mario need to find the correct exit to actually progress. Throughout each world, every level is harder than the one prior. The game has just as good a difficulty curve as its predecessor, although the main game never gets as hard as Mario 3. Luckily, the inclusion of 2 bonus worlds with much more difficult levels gives those who want a good challenge a great offering. Level design has never been better. Mario World continues in the Mario 3 design ethos of coming up with a bunch of cool ideas, then using them each as little as possible. And these ideas are spread throughout the entire runtime, with only the hardest ones returning for the extra post-game worlds. I really loved the puzzle levels, like the ghost houses and everywhere in the Forest of Illusion. Any level with a secret was so fun to scour each corner until it was found, and being rewarded with one of the colored buttons was so exciting. Knowing blocks of that color will appear in many other levels in the game. There were also some good auto-scrolling levels, or at least ones that were so hard they imprinted themselves upon my at-the-time child mind. And I can't stress enough that the Star Road and Special Zone levels are the toppest of tiers. And Tubular isn't even that hard, just get good. As an added challenge, there are usually 5 dragon coins in each level. Sometimes tricky platforming needs to be performed for Mario to get each, and collecting all 5 grants Mario an extra guy. Once all have been collected in a level, they don't reappear. These are totally and completely optional, they're not tracked anywhere, and if the game is quit and restarted, they all respawn. That being said, it's a really fun challenge every time I play to try and get them all, even though I've never actually achieved it. Within each level are 2 gates. The midway gate acts as a mushroom if Mario is small and becomes a checkpoint if he ever dies, and each level culminates with a giant gate. In each gate there is a tape moving up and down where if touched grants some points. After Mario collects 100, he's taken to a little match minigame that nets extra 1-ups if done well. Aside from the gates, some levels also have keys and keyholes. Mario finding the key and putting it into the hole unlocks the secret exit. When a level is beaten, whether it's the intended path or a secret exit, the world map changes in response. A path grows from the beaten level to the next, building bridges when necessary, sometimes lowering or raising cliffs and obliterating castles when possible. Then, sometimes if Mario walks, something on the map will respawn, like how a Cheep Cheep jumps out when walking over a bridge. The way the map reacts and evolves to what Mario has done really makes Dinosaur Island feel like a place. One knock against Mario World would be the item variation. Gone are the Raccoon, Tanuki, Frog, and Hammer suits, replaced with the new item, the Cape Feather. And while the cape is truly an amazing item, it is a little too overpowered. Holding down B allows Mario to slowly descend, making platforming significantly easier. Also, a skilled enough player can use the cape to fly over an entire level, negating any real challenge. So the item is a little overpowered, yeah, but it is also really fun to use. Spinning into an enemy brazen enough to cross Mario's path is always satisfying. Fire flowers also make enemies drop coins now, too. Yoshi comes with his own moveset, being able to gobble up most enemies, fly with the blue shells, stomp with a yellow, or spit out fireballs, yum, when he eats a red shell. He's also immune to any ground hazards, pits and lava excluded, and just obliterates any enemy that gets under his feet. Additionally, Star Road introduces colored Yoshis. These get powers based on their color regardless of the shell they ate. So a red Yoshi will always spit fireballs, a yellow will always stomp, and most useful, a blue can fly with any colored Koopa shell. Speaking of enemies, there are so many. Koopas and Goombas and Boos all make their return with a bunch of new classics like Blarg, Charge and Chuck, and who could forget everyone's favorite, the amazing Flying Hammer Brother! He has only ever appeared in this game. And even within the regular enemies, they each get their own variations. Koopas can now fly with capes, kick their shells, hop around, or fly with wings. Bob-ombs and Goombas can parachute out of the sky. Charge and Chucks can run, throw baseballs, kick footballs, dig up rocks, jump up and clone themselves, and then run some more. There are so many types and iterations, it's so exciting to see what type comes next. The other big knock against the game would be boss variation, or lack thereof. The 7 Koopalings make a return, but there are only 4 types of battle. 3 of them repeat. Additionally, there's Reznors in each of the 4 fortresses, each has fought the exact same, knocked them out from underneath. There's a pretty simple big Boo fight, and then the big bad Bowser himself, both of which involve throwing things up at the boss. Each of the castle levels are unique and great, but the bosses that meet Mario at the end can feel a bit lackluster. And finally, aesthetically, the game almost couldn't be better. Koji Kondo knocked it out of the park with the soundtrack. Every track is an absolute banger. Every world theme perfectly matches the area, and the level themes never get old. I truly love the steel drum ragtime that permeates every song. Plus, the credits theme might be one of my most favorites from the series. The graphics keep up on every level. Despite later SNES games like Donkey Kong Country or Yoshi's Island looking prettier, this game still looks great. A good art style is never to be messed with. Okay, I think I've talked enough about Super Mario World. It is a truly amazing game. Every level is fun, the enemies are interesting, the world map is just so fun to explore, but it's a bit easy at times. Although that might also be because I've played every level numerous times at this point. Literally every year. And I don't have to even think about the ranking for this bad boy. 3 is great, but World improves every aspect. My new ranking is 6. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 5. Super Mario Land, 4. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 3. Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, 1. Super Mario World. And now we move on to the final traditional 2D Mario game, and the last of these games that I will be playing for the first time. Up next, Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins for the Nintendo Game Boy. It was released in 1992 in both Japan and the US, only a couple weeks apart, with PAL regions getting it the next year. I hadn't heard too much about Mario Land 2 before going in. I knew most people liked it more than the first, that the illustrious Wario makes his premiere, and that it was on the Game Boy. I was surprised to read that some critics at the time liked this one less than the first Mario Land, which is a wild thing to consider given how many improvements were made. Regardless, the game went on to be the 5th best-selling Game Boy game, so I don't think Nintendo complained too much. Mario Land 2 was once again produced by Gunpei Yokoi and directed by both Hiroji Kiyotake and Takahito Hosokawa, and the team was actually pretty bitter to be working on a new Mario Land. They instead wished to work on their own IPs. This led to the creation of the main antagonist Wario, which is a play on the name Mario and the Japanese phrase warui, which means bad. If you're gonna make us work on a Mario game, we're gonna make a bad Mario. In the same vein, they originally wanted to make a game that broke traditional Mario conventions, but later opted to make the game more aligned with Mario World. So Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins has Mario returning to his, private island after saving Princess Daisy from the previous Land game, only to find his castle has been taken over by his wow. Childhood friend Wario. Wario stole the keys to the castle, which in this case are the titular coins, and sent them to be guarded by the brainwashed inhabitants of, and I cannot stress this enough, Mario's private island. The team wanted to make something new, and they certainly did that. Anyway, Mario gets his coins, beats Wario, and converts his castle back to its normal, not evil self. Well, aside from the truly wild story, the gameplay of Mario Land 2 was really good. Coming off of both Mario Land 1, which was a somewhat inferior Mario Bros. 1, and Super Mario World, one of the best platformers ever, I was actually surprised to find Mario Land 2 felt like a weird half-step between Mario 3 and World. The levels are smaller, but have a lot of explorability like in World, including some secret exits and halfway checkpoints. The overworld map has Mario walking around much like in World, but the map is smaller and less interactive, like across from Mario World and Mario 3. The physics were a little bit stiff, but much more responsive than in Mario Land 1, and platforming off enemies felt almost as good as the home console counterparts, except for in water. It felt like a brick trying to swim during the water levels, and I was surprised to see how expansive Mario's moveset was. Of course, running and jumping are normal, but by pressing down and jumping, Mario retains his spin jump to break blocks. Speaking of enemies though, Koopas and Goombas once again make their return with 100% less exploding shells. Piranha plants and boos and scalyfish make their return too, as well as a whole bunch of really weird new ones. I fought a whole bunch of bugs in this game. I avoided really angry stars once, and hopped on walking ski masks with knives sticking out of them. Also, I lied, they were redesigned, but there are turtle enemies that blow up after Mario stomps on them. Of course, all the enemies have to be weird because the areas Mario explores are also pretty strange. He visits the usuals like a haunted house or underwater, but then he goes to space the first time, or gets shrunk and explores a normal-sized house but really small. The weirdest of all is the giant robotic statue of Mario himself that he has on his own island for some reason. With the already strange areas and enemies in mind, the bosses kind of don't stand out that much. Tatanga is back from the first game in the space area, of course, but then there's just normal stuff like a big bird, some squibs, a witch. Why does the Mario statue have 3 little pigs in it? I don't know, that one is still strange. Every zone consists of 3 or 4 levels, each which are pretty well designed. Every level ends with an exit door with a special bell up high that if rung allows Mario to play a minigame to get more power-ups or lives. The power-ups are returning mushrooms and fire flowers, although the latter now gives a feather instead of the new color palette. The stars make Mario invincible, and the new carrot which gives Mario bunny ears and allows him to glide almost infinitely. 1-ups are once again hearts. Probably the most innovative change they made to the formula was how any zone can be selected in any order, years before Zelda A Link Between Worlds even tried it. But much like in Zelda, this kinda ruins the difficulty curve. Being able to customize a play session is fun, but it also makes the game very easy. At least until the final level, where getting to and beating Wario had me dying more than the rest of the game combined. The game also does look pretty good, especially for the Game Boy. The sprites are much bigger on screen, but the levels compensate for that, and every enemy is recognizable and visually interesting. Plus, Mario's sprite looks great, and the world map is fun. The music was done by Kazumi Totaka, and was one of the earliest appearances of Totaka's song. Most of the soundtrack revolves around the main theme, with most songs being a slight remix of it. And while the theme is good, after a while I did get pretty tired of hearing the same song over and over. But that did make any song that wasn't the main theme stand out especially well, like in the Star Maze level. The game was much larger than the first, but still wound up being fairly short. It took me a couple hours rather than just one, but the whole time I had a lot more fun. While controlling Mario on the Game Boy could never be as good as on a home console, it still did the job well. Every level was fun to play, the unique environments were fun to explore, and while easy, any game that was even potentially responsible for WarioWare gets a pass in my book. So the big question for me right now is, do I like this game more than Mario Bros. 2 USA? It's clearly better than the Lost Levels and Mario Land, but I can't do the original Mario Bros. That dirty. You know, I can't do Mario 2 that dirty either. My new ranking for 2D Mario games is 7. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 6. Super Mario Land, 5. Super Mario Land 2, 4. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 3. Super Mario Bros., 2. Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1. Super Mario World. And with that, we are done with the classic 2D Mario platformers. I'm almost a little sad to be saying goodbye. I'm also sad to be skipping Yoshi's Island, but that is a Yoshi game, not a Mario game. And with that, we enter the third dimension, the launch title for the Nintendo 64, Super Mario 64. The game was released in June 1996 in Japan, September that same year in the States, and March the next in Europe. And apparently in 2003 for the IQ player in China. With Shigeru Miyamoto once again at the helm, this marked Mario's first leap into 3D. And for Nintendo's first foray, it was a solid attempt. So actually the game did very well. It was the killer app for the N64, was highly praised by pretty much everyone, and still heralded today as the greatest Mario game ever by people who are wrong and blinded by nostalgia. Of course I hold my own biases. The first time I played Mario 64 was the DS port, which, IMO, did a lot to make the game better, even if I had to use the D-pad to move. But this video isn't about 64 DS, it's about Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64. And Mario 64 made a lot of firsts for the series. It was the first main launch title for the N64, the first truly 3D Mario game, the first mainline game with Charles Martinet as Mario's voice, and most importantly, the first time Princess Peach was called Peach outside of Japan. Eagle-eared listeners might have noticed that in every US released Mario game before, I only referred to as Toadstool. But with 64, Nintendo of Japan and America finally unified her name as Princess Toadstool Peach. Speaking of Peach, Mario 64 opens with a letter penned by her, inviting Mario over to the castle for some cake. Unfortunately, by the time Mario gets there, Bowser has taken control. Also, he's Bowser now, not King Koopa. He's stolen the Power Stars, trapped Peach and the Toads in the walls, and it's up to Mario to defeat his minions and take the stars back. To find the stars, he needs to explore various paintings hung around the castle, as they take him to various different worlds. With enough stars, he's able to overpower Bowser's enchantments, taking him further into the castle, and after beating the Big Koopa 3 separate times, Peach and the Toads are rescued. Peach lands a big smooch on Mario's big old nose, and they go bake a cake. And I'll admit, Super Mario 64 is a very good game, especially in the sense that there aren't any bad Mario platformers. And for the first time that Nintendo ever made a 3D platformer, there are things I even consider perfect. But looking at the whole package, I just don't think it's as good as people remember it being. First, I want to discuss things I find perfect. To start, Koji Kondo, you did it again. My lord, every song is amazing, timeless, perfect. Bob-omb Battlefield, great. Slider, amazing. Koopa's Road, one of the hypest songs ever composed. Bowser's final theme, you know it's going down. And of course, Dire Dire Docks, one of the most beautiful themes in any Mario game. I especially love how different instruments come in at various points in the level. It's a magical experience first diving in the water and having the violins begin to accompany Mario's journey. There's no surprise that so many of these themes have been reorchestrated for later games because even with the limited sounds the N64 could put out, each track is timeless. While the soundtrack is a very important part of any game, it's really not as important as the actual gameplay. Miyamoto, the lead designer Makoto Mayanaga, and the rest of the development team did an amazing job with designing this game. From the very beginning, when Mario jumps out from that pipe, through every course, up to the final trek to Bowser, it is all top tier. The opening courtyard of Peach's castle is a great example. Opening with a walkway towards the castle doors, the player is drawn to the first waypoint but is given the choice to follow the path or jump over the small hill, giving the earliest practice of Mario's movesets. And if the player doesn't follow or comes back to the area later, there's water to practice swimming and a couple different secrets inviting the player to explore everything. The castle halls give the same sense of exploration. Mario would never know which painting might whisk him to a brand new world. Oh weird, there wasn't this light from the ceiling before. Why is this wall all wiggly? Once in an actual level is where the fun begins. Despite the low polygon count, despite the limited textures, despite the mostly barren landscapes, each level is so fun to explore. I want to climb to meet this King Bob-omb. I want to go into this warm cabin in the snow. I want to climb up this same mountain for the dozenth time to catch this stupid monkey. Okay, everything but Tall Tall Mountain is great. Given just the slightest hint of the star name, it's always an adventure jumping around to find where the next star leads. And even coming in with near perfect knowledge of each level, it is still really fun to exist in this world. Even the ways that the levels evolve over time is so monumental. Like how in Bob-omb Battlefield, initially the bombs are fighting, but after the defeat of their king, the land is now in peace. Or how our tower sprouts after defeating the Womb King. These things make the world come alive. It's especially cool how in Dire Dire Docks, after chasing out the eel, entering the sunken ship and draining it of its water, the next level has the eel in the lake proper and the ship is now on the surface. These small design decisions, how earlier stars affect later ones, combined with the sheer creativity of the mission design, make all the levels so fun. And don't get me started on the Bowser levels. Originally holdovers from when Mario 64 was going to be more linear, each one perfectly matches the skill level the player should be at that point, and really makes the climb to Bowser feel epic. Then the battle happens and it's just fine. Mario needs to run to Bowser's tail, grab it, swing him around, and so long, Bowser, him into a floating mine that's just there for some reason. It makes good utilization for this new 3D area, but it's just not really all that fun. None of the bosses in 64 are that great, really. King Bonbomb has the same mechanic, just without spinning in the mines. The cool hands, while excellently designed, just need to be hit a bit. Every boss has good dialogue and many look cool, but the actual mechanics of the boss battles don't do much for me. And now we're finally here, talking about the mechanics. Oh boy, just hear me out first, okay? Clearly Nintendo had something going on. Idealistically, Mario's moveset is great, especially with the future sight looking at later games. Mario never stops running, long jumping, wall jumping, triple jumping. His hit is often replaced with another attack, but the dive has stayed strong throughout. But the problem with this moveset in Mario 64 is that none of it feels good. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I mean, a lot. And I think I've decided the most important part of any game, especially platformers, is the game feel and physics. How does it feel to move, to jump? How fast does the character fall? How long does it take to start moving? How much control do I have in the air? How much control do I have when Mario turns, when he stops? Mario 64 got a lot good. A truly good start. But then there are baffling decisions that annoy me to no end. And a lot of this is very nitpicky, but these nitpicks add up and over the course of the full game start becoming unbearable. I don't like how long it takes for Mario to start running. I don't like how Mario needs to walk in a meter-wide circle to turn around. I despise how walking or jumping onto a wall the wrong way has Mario bouncing back. I don't like how Mario can't triple jump onto a ledge. I don't like how the window for a wall jump is 2 frames long. Even though swimming and flying don't feel great, I'll give them a pass. Later games weren't able to improve them anyway. I just don't like controlling Mario in Super Mario 64. And of course the biggest offender of this is the camera. I largely get what they were going for. The camera often zooms out to give a cool angle of the action. It's just that it's at an 85-degree angle and rotating, and I'm trying to move Mario along a thin board. I couldn't count the amount of times I tried positioning the camera behind Mario, and the game just would not let me. And while it didn't happen too often, I did die because of this. The rest of my complaints mainly fall into the old game is old category. There's not many polygons, the draw distance is painfully short, the enemy sprites don't look great, Mario and Bowser's designs are all really chunky. Okay, actually the chunk is good. While Mario 64 DS did fix a lot of this, and the reused areas in Galaxy 2 or Odyssey do a swell job of showing this world in HD, I don't actually hold any of this against Mario 64. They don't affect the gameplay too much, and a lot of the low-quality graphics are endearing. Look, there is a lot to love about Mario 64. The levels are fun, every star is creative, the 100 coin stars are a fun challenge, the secret stars and the castles are fun to seek down, except the second time Mario catches that stupid rabbit. The hub world is fun to explore, and the music is A+. But none of it is as fun as it should be. If Mario controlled even a little bit better, just a bit more like Sunshine or Odyssey, it would be so good. Plus, a lot of the content from 64DS is really good, and the version bundled in Super Mario 3D All-Stars should have included it. In the end, the game is not bad, it's just not perfect. Being the first 3D Mario game, it lands at the #1 spot for now. This is the first Mario game to feature penguins, so that's worth quite a bit in my book too. Anyways, as I rank more, keep in mind my complaints. Now I think it's about time we all take a vacation. Soak up some sun, get wrongfully sentenced for a crime that occurred while we were out of the country. It's time to play Super Mario Sunshine! Wahoo! Released in 2002, July in Japan, August in the States, and October in PAL regions, all on the Nintendo GameCube. This is the first time a Mario game has been released in every targeted market in the very same year, although it did take until December to launch in South Korea. But still, this is the shortest amount of time people had to wait to play the newest Super Mario release, and it launched to, well, good reviews. Sunshine was one of the best-selling games on the GameCube, cited multiple times as being the best platformer on the console, and at launch received mainly 8s or 9s. And while this is never good practice, comparing the review scores of 64 with Sunshine, 64 usually did a bit better, but with more time is where the opinion on Sunshine really started to sour. The game has a lot of problems that were caused mainly by a very short development period. While 6 years passed between 64 and Sunshine, after many failed tech demos like the direct sequel to 64 and the Mario 128 tech demo, development in earnest didn't begin until late 2000, early 2001. Only a year and a half of dev time leads to a lot of cut content and many other features being rushed. There were 5 levels cut from the main game, the final product had glitches abound, the game was even supposed to run at 60 FPS but had to be reduced to 30. There was simply not enough time for optimization, and in the time since 2002, many people have come out of the woodwork to blast Sunshine as one of the worst Mario games. Unplayable, a travesty. They are wrong. Being produced by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, Sunshine was directed by Yoshiaki Koizumi and Kanata Usui. It is also the very first game to have Satoru Iwata as the executive producer. The score was a collaboration between series GOAT Koji Kondo along with lesser-known artist Shinobu Tanaka, who wound up writing some of my favorite pieces from the game. During development, they wanted to do a lot of stuff, and after cutting a bunch of it, they still wound up with a pretty weird game. The team was worried about Sunshine being too similar to Mario 64. To differentiate, they gave Mario a fun companion, the Flash Liquidizing Ultra Dowsing Device, or FLUDD for short. FLUDD's able to shoot water at stuff, hover in the air for a short time, or with the right nozzles go really fast or really high. Mario lost the ability to crouch or punch, but the game more than makes up for it by the fact that Mario actually controls well. What made it all the weirder, the whole game is voice acted? Well, at least all the cutscenes have Mario characters speaking in full English dialogue. And it's, well, charming. I'll say it's charming. I played Super Mario Sunshine a lot as a kid. It was the first 3D Mario game I played and I loved it. I loved the worlds, the music, every level felt so big. I just accepted the somewhat frequent jank as it is because I was a dumb kid. I accepted how weird everything was because I was a dumb kid. And now that I'm a dumb adult, well, in Super Mario Sunshine, Mario's going on a vacation with Peach, Toadsworth, and a bunch of toads to Isle Delfino. Upon arriving, the whole place has been covered by this icky paint-like goop, and all the shine sprites have fled. Mario meets FLUDD and helps clean off the airport, afterwards finding that all the Piantas think he did it in the first place. Well, an all blue and gray version of Mario at least, but the Piantas blame him anyway. After arresting Mario, they task him with cleaning up the whole island and to get rid of all that ugliness. He does so for a while, eventually meeting up with his shadow self, who turns out to be Bowser's son, Bowser Jr., and Princess Peach is his mom. And he captures her. Shocker. So Mario finishes cleaning up the island, ruins Bowser's giant floating hot tub, the shine sprites return, and the gang finally get to have their vacation. It's not exactly a good story, and the voice acting does not help, but it is the most story we've gotten in a Mario game thus far, and that is something. So Mario's cleaning up the island. This pertains to him traveling to different areas, doing tasks for the locals, and receiving a shine at the end. And the levels are all so fun to be in. Each is given a unique theme and has relatively different styles despite all being on one island. Rico Harbor is filled with working folk in sailor uniforms, there's construction equipment for platforms, boats everywhere, and the theme song is heavier. Gelato Beach has a more upbeat song and is filled with a bunch of people on vacation. Even the other beach level, Serena Beach, manages to feel different by taking place at sunset and having half the levels take place inside the hotel. Each level is filled with the locals, either Piantas, big folk with palm trees for hair, or Nokis, shell-like people. During each shine within each level, most of them have different dialogue referencing something going on. My favorite little dialogue was a Noki couple that first appears on Gelato Beach where the girl is just constantly dragging the boy. Some of the NPCs might give flavor text, others give hints on how to complete the level. Entire subplots occur throughout the different shines and sometimes persist through entirely different levels. That, combined with how certain aspects of the levels change depending on which shine is selected, makes every series of shines feel like an insulated but continuing adventure. Speaking of level design, I truly love every single one. For a game that was released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2002, they are still so fun to explore. Each level path usually has a few different ways to progress to the goal, and the harder platforming sections where FLUDD is taken away are really good linear 3D stages. The few NPCs really give a sense that each area is actually lived in. Mario is just showing up and cleaning up some goop. And with the expansive levels, every corner usually has something fun to find. A lot of the time, Mario might find a secret shine or a shortcut to finish the level quicker. Unfortunately, most of the exploration is only rewarded by a blue coin. And blue coins do suck. Each level has 30 hidden in different areas and 10 can be traded in for an extra shine. But some only appear during certain shine missions and are very easily missable. I have completed this game numerous times, but I always manage to miss at least one blue coin. This time, the blue bird in Bianco Hills is the one that got me, but there's always at least one. The worst offender of this is also my favorite level, Noki Bay. A bay with high walls, one of the best tracks in the game, and a gorgeous blue and green color palette. I love exploring here, finding all the nooks and crannies to beat the level more efficiently. And the blue coins are just everywhere. It's hard to track them, some become inaccessible almost randomly. It can be so frustrating, especially for first time, or second time, or third time, or etc. time to players who don't have them all memorized. They wouldn't be so bad, but specific blue coins aren't tracked. Only the total count collected. So the only way to know if I missed the second coin under the box on Mission 2 that only appears in Mission 2 is to go and check that specific spot during Mission 2. And if I've collected 29 out of 30, but I don't remember exactly which ones I've gotten, the only sure way is to check them all. This is obviously a hit from the cut levels. They still wanted 120 shine, so now we need enough blue coins to buffer that number. The blue coins are probably the most egregious example of cut content, but the list goes on. While I do love all the levels, sometimes they just don't hold up as well. The surfing for red coins in Rico Harbor is messy, Mario has to fight Gooper Blooper 3 separate times, there are 2 different shines where he just has to quickly clean up goop. And this is in addition to the vast amount of glitches. Yeah, each level seems to get good visual polish, but then Mario falls through a block or glitches while landing on the edge of something. And the lily pad level. And the pachinko machine level. After years and years of honing my skills, I can get through everything with relative ease, but I do accept that they are fair and valid criticisms. Speaking of not valid criticisms, I think the game controls incredibly well. A big thing for me is game feel, and whenever I am controlling Mario, it feels great. He moves when I want him to, he turns on a dime, his jump and area controls feel perfect. FLUDD could have used a bit of work admittedly, but the solo platform levels, Chuckster level exempt, really show how good it feels to platform. He's got a jump, a sideways jump that goes a bit higher, a spin jump that goes even higher, and the triple jump that is sometimes hard to set up right. But this skill set combined with FLUDD's hover capabilities make for really fun movement. In fact, this type of excellent movement just so happens to come back in about 9 more games, so hold tight until then. Speaking of FLUDD, aside from hovering, he also is the main way to do combat. Sure, Mario can still jump on things, but FLUDD is used to spray and stun enemies or hover them to get a better vantage point for a stomp in. Being set on a different island from the other games, there are a lot of different enemies in Sunshine. We have the usuals like Pokies and Boos, with newcomers like Cataquacks and Strollin' Stoops. And who doesn't like Strollin' Stoop? The bosses probably made the biggest impact, being the first to have Gooper Blooper, Petey Piranha, and the introduction of Bowser Jr. And while each boss is fun the first time around, I didn't really need to fight the bloopers that much, or the cannon twice, or the goopy piranha plant thing 4 separate times, or Shadow Mario in literally each level. But the electric manta ray will forever live in my nightmares. That one was tough as a kid. What I really love about the game is the vibe. It's bright, oftentimes funny, every level is fun to explore, most of the shines have a fun puzzle to solve, unless it involves spraying flippable panels, then it's literally the worst. It's really fun to run around, even just the mechanic of running and cleaning up goop feels good. The music is all great and fits every level incredibly well. It really feels like Mario and crew are on an island vacation. And the camera, while sometimes prone to going off into weird angles, at least lets the player control it. 64 gave hard angles with arbitrary limits. Sunshine gives free movements that sometimes go awry. I will always choose free movement over poorly pre-decided angles. Super Mario Sunshine has its problems, that's for sure. But what truly makes a Mario game, to me, is how fun it is to play, how good it feels to move, how good it feels as a platformer. Mario 64 was a great start. It did so many things correctly on the first try. But with 6 years of tinkering, Mario Sunshine was able to fine-tune the movement just a bit more. Maybe I'm being overly defensive, and maybe it's just the nostalgia talking, but I do hope I was able to adequately explain how my new ranking is number 2, Super Mario 64, number 1, Super Mario Sunshine. It's not the best Mario game by any means, but it's more fun to control, and that is really the deciding factor for me. But there are still a lot of 3D Mario games, and there's no way Mario 64 will wind up at the bottom, no way Mario Sunshine will land at the top. But before we find out where they land, first, we're already headed back to 2D Mario with the Nintendo DS Classic, New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS. So this one is a weird one. The game was released in 2006 across all regions, but in the US it launched 10 days before Japan in May of that year. The first in a surprisingly high number of Mario games that continued this trend. But that's not the only reason why this is a strange one. Oh no. Initially, the game launched to fairly high praise. Many folks, including myself, loved being able to play a new 2D Mario game with great levels, although a lot of people complain of the general easiness, as well as how derivative it was of the other 2D games. That being said, it's still the best-selling Nintendo DS game, and the second best-selling Super Mario platformer. Handhelds, am I right? Continuing the handheld Mario game lineage, the Mario folks such as Miyamoto or Kondo were off working on the next home console game. The producer was Hiroyuki Kimura, the director of all the Mario Advanced remakes. The game was directed by Shigeyaki Asuke, who at this point had worked on Sunshine and the latter two Advanced games. Koji Kondo wrote the main overworld theme, while the rest of the score was written by Asuka Ota and Hajime Wakai. Now the score is one of the weirdest parts, because yes, it's very good, especially for a DS game. But New Super Mario Bros. Was the first game to introduce the, bas, where in certain parts of the song, ba will play and all the enemies on screen will react to it. It's a really weird decision, but for the time, ignoring future spoilers, it's kind of fun and quirky. On top of the ba thing, the dev team really had free reign over the changes to the 2D Mario formula. For the first time, the game uses a blend of 2D sprites and 3D models, becoming an early example of a 2.5D game. Most, if not all, of the characters are 3D, while they all run on 2D landscapes and collect 2D items. But this being a DS game, the models are all so pixelated that the two styles blend together super well. They also had a lot of fun with physics. Borrowing from Mario Sunshine, and I'm still right about that, Mario can now triple jump and wall jump, and certain obstacles like wires bend under his weight. In general, I think the game was a little too floaty compared to its pixel predecessors, but I got used to it very quickly and had a good time regardless. As I alluded to earlier, I got the game probably pretty close to its release. I know I had a DS back then, I'm just not sure how up to date I was on new releases. And I remember really loving it. I played the hell out of this game, getting every star coin, completing every level. I couldn't guess at how many hours I spent in the multiplayer mode just cruising the looping level in a blue shell. Probably not actually that much, but I have fond memories of it. Also, I think New Super Mario Bros. Might have been the first game I ever used an online guide to complete. That can't be correct, but I'm saying it anyway. But it had been so long since I played it, I didn't know how much I'd remember. So much from the game came flooding back as soon as I started it up. But not everything. Very early on, I realized I was making the same mistakes now as I did way back when I first played it. I missed the same star coins, and I looked in the same wrong places for it. It was almost surreal having such a similar experience to past me. The game's story isn't much. Mario and Peach are out on a date, I guess, walking in the fields outside of Peach's castle. Then a lightning bolt strikes the castle. Mario goes to investigate only for Bowser Jr. to show up and take Peach away. See, at the very end of Sunshine, Jr. tells Bowser that, quote, "Someday, when I'm bigger, I want to fight that Mario again." Turns out after 4 years he's big enough, and now Junior's running across 8 different lands fighting Mario at every mid-castle. At one point, Bowser straight up dies, Junior reanimates his skeleton, then brings him back to life, only for Mario to beat them both and rescue the princess. It's nothing fancy, but it leads to my next point. So much of this game is just the 3D games in 2D. Aside from all the enemies being actual 3D models, so many of the bosses are shared too. Bowser Jr. of course, but Petey Piranha is back too. As far as enemies, the eels and moneybags from Mario 64 are here, even Dory shows up. A lot of the game really feels like the devs smushed in 3D Mario mechanics into Yoshi's Island, then put a Mario Bros. 3 type paint over the whole thing. About halfway through playing, I realized I probably shouldn't have skipped Yoshi's Island for this in review, because New Super Mario Bros. Is borrowing so much from it. The Starman theme, while technically a rearrangement from 64, is the same Starman theme from Yoshi's Island. The red coins use the same sound effect. In New Super Mario Bros., the goal is to find star coins instead of flowers, but it still has Mario hopping around every corner looking for secrets. The game is even closer in physics to Yoshi's Island than it is to Mario World. And none of this is bad, it just adds more points to the Yoshi's Island is a Mario game camp, and I'm not willing to admit it. The gameplay is traditional Mario fare. Mario can get the Super Mushroom or Fire Flower, and they work as they did in World. New items include the underutilized Mega Mushroom that makes Mario really big and smash through everything for a short time, the Mini Mushroom, which is mainly used for secrets, or the shell that is only a bonus item and is exclusively used for secrets and isn't all that much fun to use, given there are no levels designed around it. This works in the game's favor though. Suddenly, the Fire Flower has become the best item once more. And aside from the new jumping abilities, the main gameplay is hopping around on enemies and reaching the flagpole at the end of the level. Getting to the top also rewards a 1-up now. A secondary goal of collecting 3 hidden star coins has been added, improving on replayability. Every level is displayed on a 3D map akin to Mario World, but each world is segmented into smaller maps like in Mario 3. Within the middle fortress level in each world, Mario fights Bowser Jr., while at the end castle, Mario faces a larger, more interesting boss. As far as bosses go, they all land into the hop on them 3 times category, but with fun twists for the 2D Mario formula. Bowser Jr. as the exception, he's easy and bland. But the other bosses are cool. There's a big Goomba, a big Pokey, and Petey's back. There are also a couple that require Mario to beat them with the Mini Mushroom to unlock Worlds 4 and 7. It has a really fun challenge. The Bowser fights don't do anything special though, the goal is to either hit Bowser enough times with a Fire Flower, or run underneath him to get to the button. Each level is well designed, every new mechanic is utilized just the right amount. There's even quite a few hidden exits a la Mario World that let Mario get to new levels, skip worlds, or just get to the end castle quicker. The problem with a lot of this is oftentimes the hidden stuff kinda sucks. Some of the star coins are hidden way out of the way, and too many secrets require coming back to a level with a specific item. The first couple times they did this it felt kinda fun, but towards the end every exit or third star coin required having a shell or mini mushroom, meaning Mario would have to go to an entire other world to get the right item. Speaking of infuriating decisions, in Super Mario World the game telegraphs every secret exit by making the level appear red on the map. In New Super Mario Bros. I just kinda have to guess. Sometimes I could tell by how the world map is laid out, but there are a few that I would have never guessed were there. In these situations, I either had to be lucky, remember my playthrough from a decade ago, or just look it up. It's such a disappointment that a game from 15 years earlier had a better mechanic for telegraphing secret exits. My last big disappointment is not that big, but I did feel it a lot. The game's easy. Really easy. Some of the secrets were tricky, but I never felt challenged by any of the platforming. Later games alleviate this in ways we'll get to, and while I enjoyed playing every level, I missed the challenges I got from, say, Mario World Star Road and Special Area. Overall, I had a really fun time with New Super Mario Bros. This great blast from a past also reaffirmed that yes, this game was really good. My memory did not fail me there. They're not really a part of the game, but New Super Mario Bros. Comes with a collection of touch-based minigames. I only sampled a few I remembered liking as a kid, and while they're kinda just a collection of phone app games, they're good for what they are. Oh yeah, the actual game. It's really fun, but a bit too easy, and some of the secrets sucked. We're already back on the 2D list. I hemmed and hawed a bit on this one. I was sure I liked it better than the previous handheld games, but where would it fall within the classics? Overall, I landed on 8 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 7 Super Mario Land, 6 Super Mario Land 2, 5 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 4 New Super Mario Bros., 3 Super Mario Bros., 2 Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1 Super Mario World. In the end, New Super Mario Bros. Did feel a bit more derivative, and it's hard to say it's better than the original. Anyway, that wraps up the Nintendo DS, and now we're headed to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism, space, with Super Mario Galaxy! Mario's continued adventures in 3D now brings him to outer space! The game was released on the Wii across the month of November in 2007, and everybody loved it. Many claimed it to be the best Mario game since Mario 64. Others claimed it to be one of the best games of all time. And riding off the immediate and huge success of the Nintendo Wii, Mario Galaxy both reviewed incredibly well and sold like gangbusters. Upon thinking back, Mario Galaxy was probably the first game I ever pre-ordered. Having managed to get a Wii a few months earlier, read my dad bought us one when the local Hollywood Video finally had them in stock, I could not have been more excited to get my hands on Mario's new adventure. I vividly remember getting the GameStop call from Charles Martinet and was so excited when my mom arrived at my show choir performance with the game in tow. Maybe that's a bit too personal. Either way, I was excited, and I fell in love with the game pretty much immediately. I played the heck out of it back then, and I've continued to play it somewhat regularly ever since. The last time I played the Wii version was a few years back, with my 2 most recent playthroughs having been on the Switch port. Which is to say, at this point, I know Mario Galaxy fairly well. As for development, the game was inspired by the GameCube's tech demo Mario 128. The eventual game director Yoshiaki Koizumi was inspired by the spherical platforming and wanted to base a game entirely off of it. Despite initial skepticism, when the prototype was finished, the dev team realized they had a truly innovative gameplay mechanic. The initial design truly created Mario Galaxy. Spheres led to planets, it led to spinning for Mario's main attack, it led to a truly stellar soundtrack. The soundtrack was a collaboration between Mahito Yokota and Koji Kondo. Initially, Yokota wrote 28 tracks with a Latin American influence, but Kondo rejected it. Eventually, Miyamoto helped decide on the bombastic and orchestral score because it felt more space-like. Kondo wound up only writing 4 songs with Yokota writing the rest, and with a 50-person orchestra bringing them to life, the first time in the series, it really cemented Mario Galaxy as one of the best Mario soundtracks for sure. The game itself starts out with a short storybook describing the Star Festival, a celebration every 100 years where a comet, raining tasty starbits, nears the Mushroom Kingdom. Peach has invited Mario to her castle for the celebration, but upon arrival, Bowser makes his own uninvited entrance. He scoops up the Peach and her castle, makes claims about a new galaxy, and has a Magikoopa underling strand Mario falling through space. That is, until Mario wakes up to find some Lumas who eventually lead him to Princess Rosalina, the ageless mother of the Lumas who travels the universe in a giant space station known as the Comet Observatory. She instructs Mario that Bowser has stolen all the stars from the observatory and it's up to him to get them back. So he does, beating back Bowser and Bowser Jr. thrice each, returning the observatory back to its full glamour and traveling to the center of the universe to get Peach back. But without the power of the grand stars, one of Bowser's new planets implodes upon itself, creating a black hole that will consume the entire universe. The Lumas of the Comet Observatory sacrifice themselves to save everyone and create a brand new galaxy in the process. Okay, this one actually has a story. Yeah, in the end of the day, it boils down to Mario rescuing Princess Peach, but they did some really fun stuff with the lore, and personally, I love it. No matter how many times I see the ending, I still find myself getting a bit emotional. Of course, for most of the game, the story really doesn't make much of an impact. Super Mario Galaxy is segmented into a series of different levels called galaxies. There are 6 domes in the Comet Observatory that are slowly unlocked as more stars are gained. Each dome grants access to a collection of galaxies. Some galaxies only have 1 star and are basically one-off levels, with others being larger galaxies with 3 main missions and usually at least 1 secret. But the big difference is that even galaxies with more missions are far more linear than the stages in the previous 2 3D games. Yeah, there might be larger areas to explore occasionally, but the game is always funneling the player from planetoid to planetoid, with the end goal of receiving a star. And I think this worked really well. It was the start of linearization that would continue with the next few 3D Marios, but it really made the 3D games feel like actualizations of 2D platformers in the 3rd dimension. Each galaxy consists of a series of different planets that Mario must run, jump, and spin his way through. Running and jumping is mostly the same as it is in Mario 64, the long jump is back, the triple jump is as good as ever. The new spin move allows Mario to knock around enemies, get a slight aerial boost, and travel through warp stars. It makes for some really great platforming. Oftentimes jumps that would be just out of reach otherwise are saved by a well-timed spin. Using it for combat is just as intuitive. Walking close to a Goomba, spinning it, then kicking it to have it explode into star bits just makes sense. And warp stars are usually used to get Mario from one section of the level to the next. Yeah, they're functionally simple, but the visuals of Mario flying from one planet to the other never gets old. But of course, this is the Wii, so Waggle Tech had to be utilized somewhere. In Mario Galaxy's case, it was used twice. The spin is controlled by waggling the Wiimote quickly, and pointing at the TV allows star bits to be picked up in the level. And when playing on the Wii, it really just kind of works. Yeah, it could have been a button pressed to spin, but wagging the Wiimote does feel really good. Even as I replayed the Switch version, yeah, I played through once on a Pro Controller, but my second run, I realized that holding the Joy-Con separately and waggling them to spin just felt natural. The times waggle is not used so great as the couple different minigames Galaxy holds. One has Mario balancing on a ball, which, while I got used to it, never really feels great. Another has Mario surfing on a stingray, which, while I got used to it, never really feels that good either. The one that does feel intuitive is when Mario is placed in a bubble and the cursor is used to blow him around. This works much better, 1, because it's using the sensor bar instead of the gyrometer, and 2, the player should already be used to the motion controls by picking up star bits. For the most part, each of the levels offers a series of platforming challenges and puzzles. Various enemies dot Mario's path forward. Goombas, Piranha Plants, and Magikoopas are all back. Koopas are there too, but not so much as enemies. By hopping on or spinning them, Mario can pick up their shell and throw it as a long-range attack. Plus, a few new alien-like enemies have been brought into the fold, like various squib fellows and, a couple different types of bug. But in a few galaxies, bosses appear too. Sure, there's Bowser and his son, but a lot of the new bosses are really fun to figure out and defeat, even though they all fall into the hit them 3 times category that is now standard for the Mario series. The puzzles are never really that hard, usually just finding the correct thing to spin into, or finding the hidden stars or star pieces in the larger planets. But if you utilize the power-ups really well, there's the bee suit, the ghost mushroom, the ice flower, and the fire flower also makes its return. And each is pretty self-explanatory. Bee Mario can fly for a short while and stick to honey. Ghost Mario hovers and can go through certain walls. Fire Flower shoots fire, Ice Flower shoots ice, both flowers only lasting for a short time. But the best, of course, is skating around on water while using the ice flower. And some of the best puzzles involve searching the planet for the right power-up to unlock the way to the next area. There's one really cool later galaxy that allows Mario to choose between the bee or the ghost outfit, and he can finish the level with either. Aside from the hidden stars, most of the larger galaxies also have prankster comets that can appear. These comets usually take a portion of the level and makes it harder. These come in 5 categories. The first 4 are Daredevil runs, where Mario has to beat the level without taking damage, Cosmic Mario, where Mario has to race his cosmic counterpart to the star, Speedy Comets, which give Mario a time limit to beat the level, and Fast Foe, where all the enemies in the level move much faster. Each usually twists up the levels in really fun ways, sometimes creating almost entirely new levels from pre-existing planets. The 5th kind is only unlocked after beating the final boss for the first time, and every bigger galaxy is given one. Mario is tasked with traversing the level and collecting 100 purple coins. Sometimes it's a race to get them, and there are usually over 100 in these levels, so the goal is to get a lot quickly. Or there are exactly 100, and it's more of a collectathon to find them all hidden in various places. The purple coin ones, while oftentimes riveting, can also really suck. Especially the collectathon ones. If there are only 1 or 2 left to find, it's really frustrating. And if Mario dies, the counter resets to 0. Speaking of conflicted feelings, there are things I like and don't like about the Comet Observatory. I love how it's designed, it has such a cool look to it. While exploring, it never felt as fun as Peach's Castle in 64 or Delfino Plaza from Sunshine. The vibes and the lore I got from the library do make it really cool. It does suck getting around in it though. Sometimes I just wanted to get to the next hub of levels, but the game needed me to climb for an hour to get there. And the most aggravating thing for me, a completionist, is the completion criteria for Super Mario Galaxy. Playing every level, finding all the secrets, and beating Bowser with 120 stars is so fun. Doing it again with Luigi to unlock the final 121st star sucks. Luigi also sucks. He runs faster and jumps higher, but is so slippery it makes for tighter platforming infuriating. The only good parts are the cosmic races, where racing Cosmic Luigi is much harder than the Cosmic Mario counterparts. And it sucks that to actually complete the game and unlock the final level, which is a really neat return to the start of the game, literally doubles the playtime. It's my biggest complaint to the game, which does say something about the overall quality. Super Mario Galaxy is great, just an absolutely superb game. A really good difficulty curve, greatly designed levels, and the aforementioned perfect soundtrack. I really couldn't ask for more. My new ranking for 3D Mario games is 3 Super Mario 64, 2 Super Mario Sunshine, 1 Super Mario Galaxy. Galaxy is the well-deserved number 1, but here's the thing. I remember really liking Galaxy 2. When I first played it, I thought it to be better than Galaxy 1, so I'm really excited to finally wrap back around to playing it, and to playing it with a Wiimote, not a Joy-Con. But first, we're once again returning to classic 2D platformers, also with a Wiimote, with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the first sequel to New Super Mario Bros., first released in November of 2009 in the US, the EU, and Australia, and a month later came out in Japan. And without bringing in any revisionist history just yet, Mario Bros. Wii was initially highly praised. Most people seem to just want more traditional Mario, myself included, and that's mostly what it delivered. Of course, the biggest twist this time around was now up to 4 people would be able to play at the same time. Apparently, Miyamoto wanted to do something to this effect way back when launching both the original Super Mario Bros. And again with Mario 64. But the processing power just wasn't there until the Wii. Miyamoto himself didn't actually direct the game, instead acting as a relatively hands-on producer, giving the director's notes for what he wanted. The soundtrack was similarly not done by Koji Kondo, with only his original songs being reworked by the other 2 composers. I can't recall exactly when, but I'm sure I was high on the game when I first played it, sometime in the year or so after release. But even back then, I didn't actually play this game with anyone else, instead treating it as a single-player experience. I did this again a few years ago and with my most recent playthrough. I say all this because from what I can tell, the game is actually quite different if played with others, and I've just never had that experience. But first, the story. It's, well, laughable. I'd argue there's even less story in this one than in the original Super Mario Bros., but nevertheless, it's Princess Peach's birthday. A large cake is delivered, but it turns out to be the 7 Koopalings and Bowser Jr. in disguise. They capture Peach, and Mario, Luigi, and 2 Toads chase after them. They beat each of the Koopalings, oftentimes aided by Kamek, defeat Bowser, and fly off in balloons after rescuing Peach. Yeah, sure. Whatever. As for the gameplay, it is pretty close to the first New Super Mario Bros., but this time with the potential of up to 4 players. There are 9 worlds in this one, with one being a special world unlocked at the end of the game. The player navigates a map much like its predecessor, defeating levels, boo houses, fortresses, and castles along the way. Every stage has 3 different star coins to collect and are either hidden in various places or require slightly harder platforming to reach. Each fortress, Mario fights a Koopaling. In the castle, Mario fights them again, but they get powered up by Kamek. And 3 places throughout the game, Bowser Jr. has to be fought in his airship. I think this is also the game that officially canonized that Bowser Jr. is Bowser's one and only son, with the Koopalings just being young contractors? Adoptees? At the very least, they're not blood related. So breaking that down, let's talk about the actual stages. They are, for the most part, pretty good. I had a good time navigating each level, finding each coin, and reaching the flagpole at the end. But there are 2 things that kinda suck with this. There are almost no levels that actually stuck with me afterwards. Sure, a lot of them were fun, but they were also so derivative from previous Mario games that nothing felt actually new. There are only 2 standouts I can ever remember from this game. One really fun roller coaster type level in World 8, and an infamously hard ice level in World 9. And despite not being too memorable, World 9 does have some great levels. They all ramped up the difficulty in really fun ways and made for my favorite set of levels easily. But having the rest of the levels be kinda bland, albeit fun in the moment, is not great. The second thing that kinda sucks is that when levels are bad, they are bad. My least favorite levels by far were any that played with darkness. Some levels make the entire world dark and only light sources or fireballs would illuminate anything else. I hated these. In platformers, I want hard platforming. I don't want difficulty by obfuscating the actual level. Super frustrating every time, especially the dark level that was underwater. I also did not like any of the motion-controlled levels. Well, all but one at least. Given this is a Wii game, the Wiimote had to be used in some way. In this case, sometimes the first player to jump on a platform would be able to control it, usually by rocking the Wiimote back and forth. These levels all wind up being too long, usually auto-scrolly, and annoying to play again if Mario missed anything. Except for one where the motion controls actually just toggled to move the platforms to the left or right. That one was cool. But aside from the design point of view, the game plays just as unmemorable. Everything is the same as its predecessor. Run, jump, triple jump, wall jump. But again, given this is a Wii game, shaking the Wiimote lets the players spin. If they are on the ground, they do a spin jump. In the air, spinning gives them a slight aerial boost in the sense that the player stays at the same elevation for just a moment longer. Now, I actually really like both of these moves, but requiring to shake the controller does not feel good. Which is wild, because I am a big proponent of shaking to spin in Mario Galaxy, but shaking while holding the controller horizontal just makes it feel all wrong. In later games, this is mapped to a shoulder button like in Mario Maker, and it feels so much better. Of course, I understand how they got there. There are only so many inputs on a Wiimote, but that doesn't make it feel great either. As far as items go, 3 have been added. The Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Mini Mushroom are back, and luckily the Mini Mushroom is only used for getting more coins. But the Mega Mushroom has been lost, most likely due to the multiplayer ramifications of it. As for the new items, the Ice Flower from Galaxy has been adapted to 2D, shooting a ball similar to the Fire Flower, except enemies are frozen into grabbable blocks when hit. The 2 original items are the Propeller Mushroom and the Penguin Suit. When using the Propeller Suit, shaking the controller shoots Mario into the air. I don't like it much. I mean, it's always really useful to have, but I prefer having my extra spin just give me more lateral movement. Plus, descending in the propeller suit takes forever. The penguin suit acts similar to the ice flower in that it shoots ice balls, but after running a bit, Mario can also slide like a penguin, which is really good, and swims much better, like the Mario 3 frog suit. Neither actually do all that much for me, despite my love for penguins. It is noticeably funny how in the initial cutscene, the explanation for these items being out in the wild is they were originally gifts for Peach. but after her capture they shoot the lot of them out of cannons, dispersing them throughout the Mushroom Kingdom, which I thought was really silly. And for the most part, items are just used to make platforming easier, but occasionally they are required to get specific star coins. Which leads me to the most annoying type of star coin, the Mario better not have gotten hit earlier kind. Sometimes Mario needs to freeze an enemy to reach a coin. Sometimes Mario needs to fly up to get a coin. All of the time it was annoying when I got there and realized I would have to replay the level. Other varieties of this are realizing Mario missed one because he jumped too high, entered a pipe too soon, entered the wrong door. These especially suck with the auto-scrolling levels. Replaying these are a true slog. Honestly, most of my complaints from this game stem from being a completionist. If I didn't need to get all the star coins, the levels would be a lot more fun. Luckily though, the rest of the star coins are actually well done. I love needing to time my jump on a Koopa just right, or learning to look for the suspicious walls that Mario can actually walk through. Maybe there are a few too many suspicious walls, but at least most of them are apparent enough. Sort of item, sort of level gimmick is the reintroduction of Yoshi. There are a handful of levels where Yoshi can pop up from item blocks. He controls as expected, can hover in the air for a short while, can eat most enemies, and gobble up fruit he runs into. If enough fruit is eaten, he pops out an egg that usually gives an item. However, Yoshi cannot be taken outside the level he's found in, which is kind of a bummer. As for bosses, there's almost nothing notable. The Bowser Jr. fights are all pretty good, using some iteration on the clown car to have a neat interaction. And the final Kaiju Bowser fight, where Mario has to run away and dodge fireballs, is pretty fun. Everything else is just jumping on the Koopalings and waiting for them to come out of their shell. None stuck out except for Wendy's castle fight, where Mario has to wait for water to drain out before Wendy becomes hittable, and I died way too many times on it and it was infuriating. Aside from coins, occasionally there are a few secret exits. These are just as frustrating as in New Super Mario Bros. With the exception that I think all ghost houses have 2 exits, the only way to tell there's a secret exit is by paying close attention to the map, and I do not like that. There's one especially egregious one in World 7, where I could hardly even tell. I just happened to remember from my previous playthroughs that there was a secret exit there. It is entirely not visible during the map beforehand. Going back, it sounds kind of like I have a lot of complaints, which is valid because so much of my playtime I found myself more frustrated than anything. And I think this is largely due to the levels just being too long. The DS game had the benefit of needing smaller levels to fit on a cartridge, and a lot of the Wii levels felt a bit bloated. This is also why World 9 is the best. Each level is short enough to not need a halfway flagpole. So needless to say, this game probably won't end up too high in my overall rankings. I didn't even mention the music, which is mostly just derivative of the DS game, and oftentimes music is my favorite part. So there's okay music, no especially great levels, too many frustrating levels, a lot of star coins that were not hidden well, and nothing especially innovative. It's not like the game is bad, but it's just bland. My new ranking for 2D Mario games is 9. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 8. Super Mario Land, 7. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 6. Super Mario Land 2, 5. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 4. New Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1 Super Mario World. It feels weird putting this down so low, but at least Mario Land 2 was doing something interesting. Wii is just more of the same. Oh boy, I'm not excited to see where New Super Mario Bros. 2 winds up. But first, we are once again heading to space with a game I have not played in a very long time, but I'm really excited to see if it holds up. I remember liking it better than the first one, and I cannot wait to play Super Mario Galaxy 2! The direct follow-up to Super Mario Galaxy, Galaxy 2 released in late May through early June of 2010. 3 years after its predecessor, but only a year after the previous game New Super Mario Bros. Wii. In fact, the game was nearly done during the release of NSMB Wii, but was held a year as to not directly compete. As far as development goes, Galaxy 2 began close after Galaxy 1 was finished. The dev team just had so many ideas that they couldn't fit into the original game, so Miyamoto floated the idea that a follow-up be created. The follow-up was planned to be Super Mario Galaxy 1 again, this time repackaged with the new content, likely as a Mario Galaxy 1.5 or Mario Galaxy More. But after a year in development, after all the cut ideas were implemented, the team just kept coming up with cool things to do. Thus, another year and a half was added to the schedule, and the game would be blown up into a full sequel. And my favorite anecdote, the lead programmer, Takeshi Hayawaka, actually designed a sort of level designer for the game so non-programmers could even create their own Galaxy 2 levels. And many actually made it into the game. I love that. In the end, Galaxy 2 released, making the Wii the only Nintendo console to have 2 new 3D Mario games, as of the release of this video. I didn't know any of this when I first played Super Mario Galaxy 2. All I knew was the amazing game I played 3 years earlier was getting a sequel, and in the end I absolutely loved it. If asked at the time, I'd probably say Galaxy 2 was even better than 1. I'd also say that the green stars sucked and the game didn't have enough spherical planets, but overall the movement and levels in Galaxy 2 outshined its predecessor. Then, some couple of years later, I watched a Let's Play of the game, and then I didn't touch it at all for probably a full decade. So when I finally got to this in my replay, I was so excited. I had completed the game at release and watched a full playthrough shortly after, so I wasn't going in with no knowledge, but anything I did have was hazed by the years in between. When I started playing, I had a lot of strange things come back. Maybe my intuition for Mario games has just gotten better, but more likely my subconscious managed to remember a lot. I could feel when a comet medal was near, the green stars flew by like a breeze, and many of the twists and turns in the levels I knew were coming. My absolute favorite feeling, though, was flying into a new level and getting the rush of, oh, I remember this level. This level is so cool. And I probably thought this for over half the levels. Despite my memories, despite my forgotten knowledge of the game, none of it hampered my enjoyment because I really had a blast the whole way through. Super Mario Galaxy 2 opens up with a storybook. A yet unknown person is telling another story of Stardust. Their hero, Super Mario, is going to meet with Princess Peach to view the Star Festival, when a really big Bowser comes in, declares his want for a big cake, and captures Peach. Mario teams up with a lost Luma, gaining the spin ability, and after collecting his first star, joins up on a starship with everyone's favorite large Luma Lubba. They refashion the ship to look like Mario and travel through the universe. After defeating Bowser Jr. or Bowser, Mario gets a grand star allowing them to travel through space and time, eventually getting to Bowser's Galaxy Generator, where it turns out Bowser is siphoning power from a big blue comet. After his defeat, the comet is revealed to be Princess Rosalina's Comet Observatory. Mario's Luma companion heads back to the observatory, stealing his hat in the process, and Mario and Peach head back to the Mushroom Kingdom. After collecting the main 120 stars, it's also revealed that the entire story was told by Rosalina to an audience of Lumas. In the end, there's really not much of a story in this one. Miyamoto even said as much in an interview before the game's release. And it makes sense, Galaxy 2 stemmed from the want to implement a bunch of cool ideas in the Mario Galaxy engine, so the plot would naturally go on the back burner. But I've got a theory about it nonetheless. I like to think that Mario Galaxy 2 takes place after the events of Galaxy 1 as a retelling of the adventure from Rosalina's perspective. Many of their characters return, from the Toad Brigade, to the Queen Bee, to the Penguins, but everyone and everything is just a bit different. There is also a lot of fanciful language with wordings like warping through space and time, which makes everything feel dreamier, more like a storybook. The ending especially, where in Galaxy 1 the universe dies and is reborn, Galaxy 2 has a storybook ending where everyone is happy. Anyway, I think I've talked enough about the lack of story in Mario Galaxy 2, let's focus on the real meat. Galaxy 2 plays, well, exactly the same as Galaxy 1. Mario runs, jumps, and spins the same, and both Player 1 and Player 2 can point at the screen to pick up star bits, with Player 2 being able to mess with enemies this time around. The biggest differences come with the new items. Bee, Boo, Fire, and Spring Mario all make their returns from Galaxy 1, but Galaxy 2 introduces Drill, Cloud Mario, and Rock Mario, and of course Yoshi makes his triumphant return. The drill replaces spin and allows Mario to quickly dig through dirt. Cloud Mario creates a temporary cloud platform whenever Mario spins. Rock Mario turns Mario into a big boulder that rams through enemies and destroys heavy objects. Yoshi can eat enemies and fruits the player points at and can hover in the air for a short distance. Yoshi himself got 3 distinct power-ups. There are 3 fruits, one that makes Yoshi run super fast, one that makes him balloon and float up in the air, and one that makes invisible platforms appear below him. And I can't say this for sure, but I want to say that the team also tightened up a lot of the controls, technically making Galaxy 2 play just a tad bit better than 1, but do not quote me on that. As far as the levels go, this is probably the biggest departure from Galaxy 1. Yeah, the game consists of heading to various different galaxies and playing through missions to get stars, but there's a design ethos to 2 that feels so incredibly different from 1. In Super Mario Galaxy, many of the galaxies feel like places. These places are memorable, feel like areas people could exist in, and Mario just happens to be traveling through them. Sure, there are plenty of galaxies that just feel like levels, but places like the Honey Hive Galaxy or Battle Rock Station have enough going on in the background that make them feel more like places Mario's exploring. Galaxy 2, on the other hand, is just a series of levels. These levels are all themed in really interesting ways, but none of them feel like places people live in, none of them feel like areas to explore. They are all just well-designed linear levels, which is not to say this is bad, the opposite even. So many of the levels are incredibly memorable because they are designed impeccably well. Every time I would start a new one and remember the cool thing that I did, I was so excited to play it again. It's just a different way to design levels. A different way that, without future spoilers, Nintendo would be bound to revisit. Each level is split up in a fairly formulaic way. All have 1 or 2 main stars, with the first always including a somewhat hidden comet medal. Getting the comet medal allows for a comet to appear later, which counts as another star. When levels don't have comets, they do usually have a hidden star, a Hungry Luma star, to be fed coins, or a minigame star. The comet system has now been upgraded since Galaxy 1. With multiple types of comets that often mesh with one another. Sometimes the comet requires Mario to defeat a bunch of enemies in short order. There are comets where Mario must run through the level quickly, picking up timers as he goes. There's comets where a trail of Cosmic Mario clones chase after him. Then there's the returning hits like Don't Get Hit or Purple Coin comets. The hidden stars are just that, stars that are hidden in tricky to get sections. Hungry Lumas open a planetoid with a star on it, and minigames are usually from this gamer called the Chimp, who gives challenges like jump on a bunch of stuff, or skate into a bunch of stuff to rack up points. He's cool. He does a cool little jump whenever he rewards a star. But he is a gamer and shall not reach God's pearly gates. The hub world is also quite different from Galaxy 1. Instead of the Comet Observatory, Starship Mario is now the main place to run around in. As the game progresses, the ship will get more visitors from across the universe and the music will get much livelier. But the levels are selected from an overworld map akin to Super Mario World. The starship navigates across segmented lines from galaxy to galaxy, selecting the level Mario wishes to run through. Sometimes there are barriers that require a certain amount of stars to proceed, and each world has a Hungry Luma that Mario can bring on ship and feed starbits to unlock a new galaxy. The final level in each world is of course a Bowser or Bowser Jr. level, where Mario either faces the boy or his now really big dad and gets a grand star, unlocking the next world. Overall, there are 7 worlds, 6 main and a special world after beating Bowser for the first time. And each level is just so innovative. Yeah, there are a lot of returning elements from earlier games, but there are also so many new ones that are just so fun. And even the returning elements are usually twisted in such a way to make them feel new. Yoshi is back, but he controls a lot differently and has 3 new cool power-ups. The moving blocks from Mario World are back, but this time in 3D. B-Mario is back, but it never outstayed its welcome, and the new levels with it are very good. And the new stuff like Rock Mario or Cloud Mario are utilized in really fun ways. There are a lot of bosses in Galaxy 2, and not all of them are the best. I'm looking at you, Squizzard. But the sheer number of them more than makes up for it. There are also so many enemies, it's not even worth bringing them up individually. A lot are returning and repurposed, but some are new and used like only once. Galaxy 2 is also the first game to introduce a mechanic to help more novice players. If Mario dies in a level too many times, a cosmic being, it's not named but is clearly Rosalina, appears before him. She offers to beat the level for Mario, turning into a bronze version of the plumber, and shows the level being played through. The only catch is she doesn't get the real star, only a bronze equivalent. This doesn't matter if the player just wants to move on, but bronze stars don't count for full completion. Aesthetically, the game looks just as good as Galaxy 1, in that even a decade later it still looks really good. Art style goes a long way. The soundtrack, on the other hand, is once again a masterpiece. I can't say I liked any individual songs as much as like Good Egg Galaxy or Gusty Garden Galaxy, but as a whole the soundtrack is a banger. Plus, in line with bringing back old mechanics but making them new, the Mario 64 slider theme is back and amazing, and Mario World Athletic is back and amazing, and Mario 64 Bomb Bomb Battlefield is back and amazing. This time the soundtrack was a true collaboration between multiple Nintendo composers, with every track performed by a great orchestra, and it is all just perfect. What is not perfect is the completion requirements. I know not everyone is a completionist, and many might be happy just beating Bowser or even just getting all 120 stars. But to fully complete the game, Nintendo is continuing one of its nastier habits and making the player basically replay the whole game again. They did it with Galaxy 1 and the Luigi playthrough, it will happen again in later games, and they did it once more with the green stars. After getting all the normal stars, Mario has to beat Bowser again. But this time, a new cutscene will show the Comet Observatory above Peach's castle, and a green comet higher still. This green comet indicates that every single star has a green star equivalent, resulting in 240 stars overall. And a lot of them are actually pretty clever. I had to pay close attention to the level geometry and listen for the star twinkle to be able to find them. Others are pretty cool. I had to do some very tight platforming to reach them, but a lot kinda suck, being the equivalent of just behind a thing, or my least favorite, don't hit this item block because Mario needs to stand on top of it to get the star. I did get them all fairly quickly, although I do have vague memories of their locations, but throughout I really just couldn't help but feel like maybe in some future game, the green star idea could be implemented a bit better. The worst part about the green star fiasco is to play the final level, the hardest level, Mario has to get them all. And this final level, the Grand Master Galaxy, is great, really showing off the strengths of the game in one final challenge. Then the Comet is unlocked by getting max star bits, which requires Mario to beat the level without getting hit. And while this time around I actually found it a bit easier than I remembered, it was well worth collecting everything. The Grand Master Galaxy is a very challenging, very great time. And this is where the video gets hard for me. I really love this game. I also really love Mario Galaxy. I just said that Mario Galaxy is a perfect game, but a perfect game that must be played twice to fully complete. Mario Galaxy 2 is also a perfect game, but the playing twice portion, while could have been implemented a bit better, at least was something new. But really what this comes down to is what style of game I like more. Do I like the more lived-in worlds of Galaxy 1 more? Or do I like the incredibly tight and memorable levels of Galaxy 2 more? I think my new 3D Mario ranking is 4 Super Mario 64, 3 Super Mario Sunshine, 2 Super Mario Galaxy, and 1 Super Mario Galaxy 2. But don't hold me to this. By the end of this in-review, when I merge these two lists together, I hold the right to swap these games around because honestly, it's a coin flip which game I like better today. Today I played Galaxy 2 and liked the tighter levels more. Tomorrow, who knows? Also, why was Galaxy 2 not in Mario 3D All-Stars? That was some BS. Also, why can people no longer buy Mario 3D All-Stars? That was some BS. Anyway, I also haven't played this next game since its release, although that was a bit more recent. It's time to continue our foray into 3D Mario games, but this time with a 3D twist with Super Mario 3D Land for the Nintendo 3DS. Released across November 2011, Mario 3D Land became the first 3D Mario game for a handheld console. And for that same reason, the word land was included in the title, as an homage to the first handheld Mario game. 3D Land did fairly well, getting mostly high praise and being one of the better-selling 3DS games. 3D Land was developed by the same team behind Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2, but managed to release only a year and a half later. This is probably due to a couple of factors. How Galaxy 2 was finished a bit early, and how in general the scope of 3D Land is actually fairly small. I played a lot of Super Mario 3D Land. This was released when I was firmly in high school, no money and barely any new games. I beat the game once, happily played through the game a second time for completion purposes, and then went back for another 100% playthrough right after. I wasn't too popular in high school. Super Mario 3D Land's story is fairly bare bones this time around. One dark and stormy night, all the Tanuki leaves are blown off the Tanuki tree. The next morning, Mario and some toads investigate, learn Bowser has stolen the leaves, is using them to power up his minions, and stole Peach. Mario sets off, beats him, rescues Peach, learns Luigi is captured too, defeats Dry Bowser, and rescues Luigi. The only notable thing is how the postcards throughout the game were the first time Shigehisa Nakawe's wonderful artwork was used in-game, and his Mario style is superb and I would love a 2D game utilizing it as sprites. Sorry if I pronounced his name wrong. But as far as the game goes, I really did enjoy it. During development, the team decided they wanted to almost merge the way 2D Mario games and 3D Mario games are played. The 3D games up to this point had some amount of exploration where the 2D games were mostly linear. 3D Land bridged these two concepts, making for a really innovative and fun design ethos. Each level has a starting point where to the right is the level, to the left is a wall or an infinite pit. The course is a series of obstacles of the regular sort, platforming enemies, very rudimentary puzzles, and are usually broken up by a flag halfway through as a midpoint. To beat the level, Mario has to jump onto the main flagpole at the very end, with getting to the very top netting an extra guy as well as being required for completion. And these levels are designed impeccably well. The merger of 2D and 3D resulted in the players no longer having camera control, instead each area of the level places the camera in the optimal position for platforming. As such, the designers were able to do whatever they wanted. Sometimes Mario is doing hard platforming over spinning blocks, others hopping through a cavalcade of enemies. The linear nature allows for anyone to run to the end flagpole without losing sight of the end goal. But to appease the 3D players, the team brought in the star medals from New Super Mario Bros. These medals are usually hidden throughout various points of each level. This is another bonus from the rigid camera. Oftentimes, medals are hidden just off screen, with some sort of path being the only clue they're there. Other times, medals are just out in the open but require going through a more challenging platforming segment than the regular route to get. Not that they're ever truly difficult, but they're a bit harder. The worst are medals that are hidden behind item requirements. If Mario doesn't have the correct power-up to, say, spin the block, then he'll have to come back to the level later. These annoyed me even when I lucked my way into already having the correct power-up. Speaking of power-ups, the item list in this game has been severely reduced for good measure. The Super Mushroom makes its first appearance in a mainline 3D game. I'm sorry, Mario 64 DS. The Fire Flower is back, but almost entirely useless in 3D. The Boomerang Flower has been introduced and lets Mario shoot out a boomerang that hits enemies and grab coins. And most importantly, the Tanuki Leaf is back, except Mario can't fly with it anymore, and only the post-game special leaf allows him to turn into a statue. Also, like in the 2D games, an extra item can be held in reserve and pulled out whenever needed. Really though, unless another item is needed for a star medal, the Tanuki Leaf should be equipped for the whole game. As I've alluded, the game is actually really super easy. Up to a point. It's never hard to avoid Goombas or Bullet Bills, even when they're powered up by Tanuki Leaves. And the newer enemies, like the new series staples, the Bitty Buddies, or my personal faves, the Draglets, don't really do anything new other than being fun to look at. The bosses are similarly rudimentary. Bowser's fight is a cool twist on crossing the bridge to reach the hammer, except now the hammer is a button, and now the level is in 3D. These segments are all fun to do, but not at all challenging. The sub-bosses are Boom Boom, back from Mario Bros. 3, and the newcomer Pom Pom. One spins, the other throws boomerangs, both get got by hopping on them 3 times. If Mario does get hit by a boss or an enemy, his life is now kept track as the same in 2D games. If he has an item, he loses it. If he doesn't, he'll shrink, and if he's small, he'll die. If Mario dies too many times on a single level, he's granted access to the new item, the Invincibility Leaf, which does what the label says. Makes Mario invincible to all enemies and hazards, bottomless pits and lava exempt. Do not grab this item. If Mario ever grabs one, the sparkles will be permanently removed from the final select completion stars. This game is easy enough without it, and those sparkles are worth it. Platforming as a whole is all around easier. I barely found myself jumping into any pits or running headlong into enemies. This is due to a couple of factors. This time around, Mario is really big on the screen. The team started development porting Galaxy 2 levels onto the 3DS and quickly realized he is far too small for this tiny little screen. Thus Mario, the enemies, and the platforms are all much bigger and spaced apart, so nothing comes as too much a surprise. It also feels like this game was almost a test drive for this style of game, and the more innovative and challenging stuff might come later. But by far the main reason why this game is easier is because Mario is easier to control. Moving through each level, in my expert opinion, has never been better. Running, jumping, side somersaults, and wall jumps have never felt as fluid as they do in this game, and I absolutely love it. And the addition of the roll and the roll jump are really good, if a bit underutilized in this game. Running is no longer triggered after running around for a bit, instead being toggled by pressing B like in the 2D games. And since the player doesn't need to control the camera anymore, this allows for much tighter segments where precision of speed is required. My only real complaints are the crouch jump, the triple jump, and the 3DS itself. Mario has to hold crouch a while before being able to spring higher in the air, a la Mario Bros. 2 USA, and having come right off the Galaxy games where I crouch jumped constantly, it kinda broke my brain. And the triple jump is gone. That I didn't mind too much, but ripped to a real one, I guess. And the 3DS. I mean, I mostly love it, but having come off the Wii's joystick, and especially the Switch's joystick, the 3DS movement pad didn't feel great. Everything else, though, perfect. Mario's aerial control, his starting and stopping speeds, his jumps all feel good. Maybe the long jump feels a little bit short, but I did get used to it by the end. Mostly. There are 8 worlds in this game, each with a few levels, toad houses that give items, and mystery boxes that reward extra star medals, and either a castle or an airship at the end. Then after beating Bowser the first time, 8 more special worlds are unlocked, each with their own full set of levels and bosses. These levels are all just redesigned and slightly harder versions from those in the normal worlds. Sometimes there are different enemies or hazards, sometimes the obstacles move faster, or there's a time limit, or Cosmic Mario's chasing Mario the whole time. They each have their own star medals, require getting to the top of the flagpole, and start feeling like a bit of a time sink instead of a fun challenge. The completionist criteria is where I start getting really annoyed with 3D Land. It also makes me amazed I did it twice in high school. Like, geez, did I have that little of a life? Yes, because after unlocking Luigi and getting every medal and getting to the top of every flagpole, then I had to go back and beat every level with Luigi too. This is literally just a time sink and annoys me to all heck. I really dislike when Mario games make me play the game multiple times for completion purposes, and I sure hope a future game doesn't make me do it 5 times instead. Either way, 3D Land made me play it twice, and doing so unlocks the final, ultimate level. Much like the Grandmaster Galaxy and Galaxy 2, 3D Land gives us one more level, a true test of skill. Level Special 8-Crown, because it's the crown level within the special world. 8, it's not a great name. Anyway, this level is hard. It excellently gives the most difficult version of all the best obstacles throughout the game, and I had a blast. A lot wound up being muscle memory from the first times I played the game, but I still died a few dozen times, slowly remastering, hopping on Hammer Bros, using a toad for an extra jump, dodging fire sticks, and avoiding a really big Cosmic Mario. In the end, I think it's even harder than Grandmaster Galaxy. I don't like that I had to play through the game twice, but it is such an amazing reward for doing so. Aesthetically, the game is solid. It looks good for being a 3DS game. The art style is what is now basic Mario, with the exception of the aforementioned 2D drawings, which I love with my whole heart. The music is all really good, the main track is especially catchy, but there's only a handful of songs, with a good chunk of them being remastered songs from previous games. And the big twist with this game, which is so pivotal to the game that I neglected to even mention it until the very end, is the fact that this game is playable in literal 3D due to the 3DS's 3D functionality. It's used in a couple places. Well, I had it on for a bit. I think it might have made some of the platforming easier. Also, it makes the postcards have a bit of depth, and that's neat. Otherwise though, mostly a gimmick. A neat gimmick, but a gimmick nonetheless. Super Mario 3D Land is a very good game. A bit on the shorter side, but the short levels were perfectly designed for a handheld console. It's actually really fascinating seeing the transformation from Mario Galaxy 1's somewhat linear but often open levels, to Galaxy 2's much more linear, to 3D Land's entirely linear. There is such a clear defined line from then to now, and I think all of them are very good. Really, it almost comes down to which style I prefer on which day. But I mean, 3D Land is no Galaxy. It's no Galaxy 2. And despite how much I love 3D Land's controls and dislike Mario 64's, 3D Land is no Mario 64. Now, if there's a hypothetical direct sequel to 3D Land that refines the controls even more, then we're talking. But for now, my current ranking for 3D Mario games is 5 Super Mario 3D Land, 4 Super Mario 64, 3 Super Mario Sunshine, 2 Super Mario Galaxy, and 1 Super Mario Galaxy 2. It's a good game, but it's just not comparable to the more fully thought out experiences. And in a couple games we'll find out that it was a great starting point. But for now, we're heading into a double feature that I've almost been dreading. I haven't played either of these games in years, one since it came out and the other when I finally picked it up on a sale on the Wii U. I've only played each of these games once, and it's a real shame they are back to back, because I might tire myself of the formula. Because these next two games finish out the 2D Super Mario Bros. Games, starting with New Super Mario Bros. 2, also for the Nintendo 3DS, except now this time it's in 2D. Again, New Super Mario Bros. 2 is the third game in the New Super Mario Bros. Series, but is also the direct sequel to the original, noted mainly by also being a handheld game and not supporting multiplayer. I don't know, the name doesn't really make all that much sense. The game was developed by a group of other teams at Nintendo and was in development at the same time as 3D Land. The game came out first in Japan in July 2012, then everywhere else that same August. And this was probably the most mixed any Mario game has ever reviewed. Critics cited its short length, its easy difficulty, and its unoriginality as to why it didn't fare as well as previous entries. I got the game right when it was released because of course I did. By this point I had fully exhausted Mario 3D Land and Mario Kart 7, and it would still be a couple months before Animal Crossing New Leaf would take over my life, and I was eager to get the new 2D Mario levels. I remember really liking this game. So much so that, yep, I fully completed the game. Twice. As well as maxing out the coin counter by collecting 9,999,999 coins. I had a lot of free time during high school. But that was the last time I played the game. I beat it twice, put far too much time into grinding for coins, then let it sit for almost a decade. And in that decade, I started to believe the detractors. I slowly forgot my experience of the game and accepted the wide belief that it just wasn't that good. And when I went in to start playing, I was actually dreading it, especially since I would have to play New Super Mario Bros. U right after. New Super Mario Bros. 2's story, much like 3D Land, much like New Super Mario Bros. Wii, much like New Super Mario Bros., really isn't a story, except now even less so. One day, Mario and Luigi grab their raccoon leaves and start flying around collecting coins. Then the Koopalings show up in Daddy Bowser's clown car and kidnap Peach. The bros beat the Koopas, beat Bowser, and rescue Peach. I started playing this game and it was an almost surreal experience. Because I turned on the game, remembered the coin mechanic, was not surprised by the lack of story, but then I got into World 1, and it's just the same. It's nearly the same layout as from New Super Mario Bros. It's got the same exact music from New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It's got the same enemies, the same level styles, the same bosses, the same hazards. It's all the same. I was almost freaking out with how little they changed the formula. There are new levels, a few new mechanics throughout, the raccoon leaf from Super Mario Bros. 3 is back, and Mario can once again fly with it, but everything else is almost a carbon copy. Most importantly, all the music, which again is just returning from New Super Mario Bros. Wii, just added a whole bunch of extra bas throughout each song. From the offset, I was ready to write off the whole experience. This one would be a loss. A new Mario game couldn't be good if it didn't have any new mechanics, could it? Okay, hear me out. The game's actually pretty fun though. As I played, while I did not actually remember anything from the game, I did find myself having a blast. None of the levels stuck with me in any regard. I even completely forgot how the final boss was played, but I had a real good time learning it all again. Each level is well designed, the star medals are mostly well hidden throughout, and they're all just short enough for the mechanics to never grow old. They're fun, just not new, ironically. The only real twist this time around is, hear me out, collecting coins. Now yes, collecting coins is a large part of literally every other Mario game before and after, but this time it was the focus. Early on in development, the team decided to have a goal of collecting 1 million coins, but after playtesting they realized with regular Mario levels this would never happen. This resulted in the team just putting coins everywhere, as well as adding multiple features to make collecting coins easier. The big one is the golden flower, which turns Mario gold and his fire balls turn brown bricks into coins, as well as giving much more coins when killing enemies. This even kills Bowser in one hit, which was fun to do this time around. There are also gold rings to jump through which turn enemies into gold variants. Every gold variant defeated nets extra coins with greater values the more kills are stacked, and some enemies leave coins behind them as they move. This is also the first game to include coins worth more than 1, with individual coins being valued from 10 up to 100. Plus, walking into certain areas has coins just appearing from out of nowhere. P-blocks activate timed blue coins to appear. There are just a whole lot of coins. My personal favorite was the blockhead, where after hitting a brown brick block enough times it turns gold and can go onto Mario's head. Then the faster he moves, the more coins he collects. And while it doesn't add much to the game, it was fun to experience. The game really nails how fun collecting coins can be. There is also an extra game mode, Coin Rush, in which Mario is tasked with running through 3 random levels on a short time limit while collecting as many coins as possible. This mode is really only there to elongate playtime as well as adding coins to the coin counter. But past me already maxed out the counter, so I had no reason to play it again. This also made my overall experience worse too. After each level, the coins Mario collects are added to the global counter, but again, mine was maxed out, so the only reason I collected coins was to get more lives and for the fun of it. Maxing out lives is a completion requirement, but they're easy to grind once the game is finished, so in the end, collecting coins was just for the fun of it. But it is fun. This is one of the reasons why the game is super easy. So many coins means so many lives, so no matter how many times Mario dies, he'll never, ever get a game over. Of course, each of the levels are also just really easy, so dying is a rarity in and of itself. But if Mario does manage to die 5 times in a row, the invincibility leaf is back from 3D Land to give Mario unlimited flight as well as, well, invincibility. But if collected, the completion stars on the start screen won't be shiny. The rest of the items, aside from the returning raccoon leaf, are the same from New Super Mario Bros. And I think this is a good thing. The mini mushroom is never overused, although the mega mushroom is still a bit underused. In hindsight, the most annoying part of NSMB Wii was how long it took to fall after using the propeller mushroom, and none of the items in this game have that issue. There's for sure some minus points for being unoriginal, but plus points for being a tighter overall package. One of my biggest complaints from the first NSMB game was the secret exits not being well telegraphed on the world maps. This is mostly alleviated by NSMB 2. All of the levels are shown on the minimap ahead of time, and levels with secret exits clearly have places where paths would branch off to get to them. And for all but a couple, I was able to find each exit with ease. What I don't like is how many secrets still rely on intuiting where the hidden block should be. I don't want to hop around like a mad person every which way hoping to find the one spot where a vine will grow, and the gold mushrooms are hidden in the same frustrating way. The secrets are better than before, but still not great. At least there are no star coins that require a specific item only found in a different level. As far as worlds go, there are 9. 2 require getting to the cannon level, with the third being unlocked after beating Bowser and collecting all the star coins. The cannon levels are actually really fun. They're Mario auto runners where the cannon shoots Mario horizontally, and he has to time his jumps to bounce off enemies and over pits. I had a surprisingly tough time with them, but they were a lot of fun. There's only 3 in the game, but they are very much a highlight. The secret world isn't all that much harder than the regular levels, but instead of star medals, they're moon medals now, which is only an aesthetic choice. So the game is short and easy, but I don't really hold that against it all that much. Yeah, I'd have loved more of a challenge, and even though this game is longer than the first New Super Mario Bros., it still feels really short. But it's a handheld game designed for short bursts, and there's always the chance that more levels would have made the whole experience begin to drag, especially since there's really nothing new. The game looks fairly good, and the 3D effect is only used to add depth to the backgrounds and does nothing else, but it was neat when I had it on. Overall, it's a fun romp. So at the very least, I'm going to put this above New Super Mario Bros. Wii. I think the fact that it's just a clone of New Super Mario Bros. Means it should be below that one. I also don't think it's overall as good as Mario Bros. 2 USA. The big question is if I like this game more or less than Super Mario Land 2. This is even harder given that I have played this one before, but Mario Land 2 I've only played once. Alright, my new ranking is 10. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 9. Super Mario Land, 8. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 7. New Super Mario Bros. 2, 6. Super Mario Land 2, 5. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 4. New Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1. Super Mario World. And that concludes the penultimate 2D Mario game. We only have one left. And I remember not liking this one, but there's been some revisionist history saying maybe it's pretty good. I don't know, I just know that there is a lot of it thanks to the Year of Luigi. Because next, we're heading to the Nintendo Wii U with New Super Mario Bros. U for the Wii U, and also the Switch now. Oh boy. So, NSMBU is currently the fourth and final game in the New Super Mario Bros. Series, as well as being the most recent 2D Mario game in general. This one, I think, would be considered the sequel to NSMB Wii, I guess because it's on a home console and has 4-player multiplayer. The naming scheme for this series really got out of hand. Anyway, NSMBU launched in 2012, November for the US and PAL regions, December for Japan, and was a launch title for Nintendo's problem child, the Wii U. Upon release, it got relatively favorable reviews, with some being more critical of the, at this point, rote formula. But even then, it was one of the best-selling Wii U titles with, about 6 million copies sold. For context, the Switch release from 2019 has sold over 13 million as of March 2022. Although, this says more about the Wii U than the game itself. I did not buy this game for a long while. I waited about a year to even get a Wii U, and waited even longer to pick up the digital version of this game. Maybe 4 years after it came out? When it was released, I was still a poor high school student, so money was tough. The 1 or 2 games I was gonna buy were gonna have to be reviewed a little bit better. When I did finally pick it up, I was a still poor college student and really just didn't want this Mario-shaped hole in my repertoire. Also, they were on sale at the time. I was not at all excited for it. In New Super Mario Bros. U, Mario, Luigi, and a couple of Toads are sitting down for some tea with Princess Peach. Then Bowser attacks, but it's different this time. A big old robotic Bowser hand is seemingly going to snatch Peach up. Instead, pulling her just out of the way, slams the 4 other party members and throws them way far into the distance. He then sets the Koopalings out in their own customized cruisers, and with the help of Kamek, transforms Peach's castle to be all lava-y. Mario and Co. land in a big old tree that spreads the new item, the Super Acorn, across the land. Then they beat everyone and rescue Peach and transform the castle back. As far as the gameplay goes, it is just the same. I was less surprised this time than with NSMB 2, but really everything in this game is just slightly polished NSMB Wii. The music, the same. The art style, the same. The physics and level design, the same. The world design, the same. In fact, the music I've been playing in the background is not from this game. This is the New Super Mario Bros. U version. Because every single song in this game is the same. This is a slightly overcritical read on New Super Mario Bros. U, but really everything that is different is just so minor, even though most of these changes make the gameplay experience better. Gone is the reliance on motion controls, with only one level using it as a gimmick, and the platforming, everything is controlled with buttons and it feels much better. The little spin Mario can do in the air feels exceptional and adds so much flexibility to the platforming. Of course, Nintendo did have to mess that up a bit. What should have been mapped to the R button and the R button alone is also mapped to the jump button. This is presumably to account for Wiimotes since they don't have R buttons. I truly hated that to get max bounce, I would either need to spin just above an enemy or time my button press perfectly. I often messed it up. As far as minor critiques go, I also felt like the enemy hitboxes were just a bit off in certain cases. Maybe I'm just more used to the sprite-based games, but multiple times I felt like the 3D model shouldn't be able to hit me just before it does. Everything else though is pretty much how it is in NSMB Wii. Run, jump, wall jump, triple jump, it's all the exact same. The main thing that the Wii U added was a second way to play. Everyone can play with either the Wiimotes or the Wii U tablet, but the tablet user can also touch the screen to add blocks in certain places. I didn't use this feature. The Switch version did add a couple extra things. Toadette and Nabbit are both played from the get-go. Nabbit is the super easy mode version of the game, and Toadette is the only character that can use the super crown, which turns her into a peach-looking humanoid. This of course gave us the internet milestone of Bowsette, the gender-fluid human Bowser. So really, this game can't be all that bad then, can it? Every item from New Super Mario Bros. Wii makes a return, but the penguin suit and the bad propeller suit are only given by defeating world map enemies. This means they're basically useless as none of the levels are designed around using them, but I didn't really mind. The one returning item I thought was done really well was the mini mushroom. Now Mario's size allows him to run up walls. It was used really cleverly in quite a few places. The new item, the Super Acorn, gives Mario a flying squirrel suit that allows him to either glide down slowly or have a slight aerial boost by pressing R. While equipped, he can also cling onto the walls for a short time before sliding down, so it's basically the Knuckles the Echidna suit. I didn't like it too much, but it's useful in places and sometimes required. Yoshis also make their return. Grown-ups are level specific and work just like in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but this time baby Yoshis are around too. Some are level specific while others can be found in the overworld map and brought into a level. Each can gobble up as many enemies as are in the level and have a unique power-up mapped to the R button. One blows up like a balloon, another lights up a dark level, another shoots bubbles that turn enemies into coins and power-ups. In the end, they're just another slight gimmick to the base gameplay, but they can be pretty fun to use at times. The only notable new enemy is the Waddle Wing, which can be sometimes found carrying the acorn, and are just Goombas except when they jump down, they glide until hitting a wall or the ground. The rest of the enemies, including bosses, are all from previous games. Most of the fortress mid-bosses are variations on Boom Boom and are all just as easy as in Mario 3. The last couple are the most fun, being a power-upped Sumo Bro returning from Super Mario World, and Kamek, who is fought just like in Yoshi's Island. No, Yoshi's Island is still not a Mario game, it's a Yoshi game. The regular bosses are just the Koopalings again, and really they all suck. There are 2 airship levels where Mario fights Bowser Jr. in his clown copter. Both of these are at least more interesting than the rest. And Bowser is the final boss again, nothing really special this time either. He gets big again, but this time Mario hijacks Jr.'s copter and whams it down. The levels in this game, I'd argue, are some of the best in the New Super Mario Bros. Series. Each manages to bring in a pretty cool mechanic that is never overutilized. Sure, a lot of Mario games have done this, but this one does it well too. And my biggest complaints from the previous games, where star coins and secret exits are particularly cruel to find, is mostly alleviated. The game even did a really cool thing where most of the courses that have secret exits hide the 3rd star coin behind it, cluing the player into where the exits are much better than the predecessors, but not as good as Mario World, where the levels are clearly indicated via color. Still not over that. Even then, some of the secrets are really dumb, like this one in the 2nd level in the game. There is literally no way I would have known to look up here. Even after looking it up, I still had a hard time getting up to it. It is completely unfair sometimes. Most aren't, but a couple are the worst designed secrets in the Super Mario series. The world map also received its biggest upgrade. The development team really harkened back to Super Mario World by making everything a single contiguous map. And even though the worlds are all the same thematically as in previous games, at least they're well designed aesthetically and it is enjoyable walking across the whole thing. Unfortunately, this continuous design did make it a little harder to decipher when secret exits occur, but the third star coin almost alleviates that. The forest where every level has a secret is also a bit disappointing. It's not as well designed as Mario World's Forest of Illusion, and is also just doing the thing again. The world skips are fun though. I really liked running up a vine and across a rainbow, or riding on a roller coaster, or sliding down an ice slide to skip entire worlds. The world map is probably the thing in the game with the most heart. There are 9 worlds this time around, each with a few levels, a fortress, a castle, and one secret level that opens up the world skip. All the levels are pretty good length, but none of them get that hard. The 9th world is 9 levels, and some of them do finally bring the heat. I can't say what playing this game would be like with multiple people, but it feels like it would get pretty hectic. And honestly, this series has gotten to the point of complete creative bankruptcy. There is just nothing more that this series can do without making large changes to its style. The music got so grating by the end, I really didn't want to listen anymore. I mean, I'd just played 2 other games with the same songs. And while Mario in HD looked good, the current style just isn't doing anything anymore. This is really shown in the stylistically best level in the game, the forest level with the painterly-like background and platforms. This level looks so beautiful, and they only use it once. If the entire game was as stylish as this, I'd have come away with a brighter opinion. But instead, it's the exception that proves the rule. And that's it. That's New Super Mario Bros. U. Except the Year of Luigi happened. The Year of Luigi was a period of a little over a year that started in 2013 that had Nintendo celebrating Luigi, for some reason, by releasing multiple Luigi-themed games. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon came out, he was featured prominently in Mario & Luigi Dream Team, and he was the subject of the first ever Super Mario DLC, New Super Luigi U. NSLU basically takes the entire game of NSMBU and replaces every level with a much shorter and somewhat harder counterpart. It also takes out Mario completely. Comically, in the opening cutscene, we just see his hat sitting on the table. Luigi is the main character. He jumps much higher, has a slight hover mid-air, and slides around a bit more. This was also the real introduction of Nabbit, the easy mode character. They also put Luigi in every little nook and cranny. The original Luigi sprite is hidden on pipes, in the sky, behind the flagpole, around enemies. It's everywhere. It's sickening. I want to play these fun levels. I don't want to see that sprite. And each level is pretty darn good. They almost feel more refined than in the base game. Most of the level hazards return from New Super Mario Bros. U, but they're all utilized very well, and since each level has only 100 seconds, none of them get old. My 2 biggest complaints are that some of the star coins are really dumb, requiring ground pounding in almost random spots. And while the difficulty starts out harder than pretty much everything else in the base game, it never gets much harder than that. But given the levels are so much shorter, NSLU is a fairly tight package. Really, my biggest complaint is some of the secret exits and star coins. I recommend just pulling up a guide because some are hidden in really dastardly positions. Finally, New Super Mario Bros. U also added 2 extra features, Challenges and Boost Rush. Boost Rush is a series of slow, auto-scrolling levels that get quicker as Mario collects more coins. It's neat, but I didn't try all of them. And Challenges are a series of actually really challenging missions that utilize enemies and levels from the regular game. Sometimes they're speedruns, or collect all the coins, or don't touch a single coin, or rack up a bunch of 1-ups. These manage to get really hard, especially when going for the gold medals, and it actually turned me around on this package. Perfecting when to jump or not jump, perfecting how high to hop off of enemies, these all manage to be really fun, if a little frustrating at points. And that is New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. And that is it for 2-dimensional Super Mario Bros. Games. I have mixed feelings about this one. After first playing it, I was really down on it. But this time around, I think I managed to find a lot more good out of it. Mainly from Luigi U and the challenges, but overall it's a fun collection of levels. Yeah, artistically there's nothing there, but it is a better package than the other New Super Mario Bros. Games. My current and final ranking of the best 2D Mario games is 11. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels. I knew it would end up here. 10. Super Mario Land. 9. New Super Mario Bros. Wii. 8. New Super Mario Bros. 2. 7. Super Mario Land 2. 6. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. 5. New Super Mario Bros. 4. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. 3. Super Mario Bros. 2 Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1 Super Mario World. You know, I just talked a lot of trash about this game, and I'm a little surprised how high it wound up being. I'm actually a little surprised with my entire top 5. I knew when Mario World would be 1 and Mario 3 2, but seeing the original at 3 feels right, but is still a bit surprising. But what can I say? This is all just math. I am objectively correct with this ranking. But we're not done yet. We still have 2 more games to go. 2 of the longest games in the Mario series, and 2 wildly different takes on what 3D Mario can be. But first, we're starting with Super Mario 3D World for the Nintendo Wii U, and now technically the Switch too. The game was released in November of 2013. 3D World went on ahead and became the second best-selling game on the Wii U with just over 5 million copies sold. And its re-release on the Switch only sold, almost double at over 9 million copies within the first few months. But regardless of Nintendo's financial woes during the Wii U era, Super Mario 3D World went on to be reviewed incredibly well. As the direct sequel to Super Mario 3D Land, 3D World went on to expand upon the ideas its predecessor introduced to great success. World had larger and more innovative levels, many new mechanics, returning ones, and fascinating contexts, all wrapped up with the ability to play up to 4-player co-op. 3D World was definitely one of the best Wii U titles. The development team behind 3D Land, Nintendo EAD Tokyo, led this project with additional support from 1UP Studio. The game was produced by the returning Yoshiaki Koizumi and directed by Koichi Hayashida and Kenta Motokura. During the dev cycle, the team seemingly went in with 2 main goals: add a bunch of really fun mechanics and make the game readable for everyone. To generate mechanics, the entire team thought up as many ideas as they could and culled any that weren't up to snuff. Some ideas had to be implemented in-game, others were only analyzed on paper, but only the best ideas could make it into the final product. The ideas had to be clear and readable, so newer players could quickly understand what to do, and so that in the chaos of 4 players jumping wildly, nobody would get lost. I didn't get any experience with co-op, but I read that while amazingly, the game still works with 4 other jabronis jumping around, apparently the camera got a bit wonky in certain situations. On a more somber note, 3D World is the last mainline Mario game executive produced by the late and great Satoru Iwata. Thanks for all the games. As I mentioned during the NSMBU review, I did not buy a Wii U at launch. As it turned out, the poorly reviewed 2D Mario platformer and Nintendo Land didn't quite sell me on the concept. But 3D World managed to pull me in hook, line, and sinker, and I absolutely loved it. 3D World and Mario Kart 8 really made my Wii U purchase worth it. I have spent so much time in both of these games. Wait? Huh? I'm told I've played through both of them more on my Switch at this point. Huh. Either way, I really loved 3D World when I first played it, but was a bit annoyed by its completionist criteria. I'll expound shortly, but I basically had to play every level 5 different times. 7 years later, when the game was put out on Switch, I was just as excited to reacquaint myself, and after playing Bowser's Fury, I was once again overjoyed with the excellent levels and now even better physics, and once again I begrudgingly completed the game. That was about a year ago, making 3D World the freshest Mario game in my play history, and honestly, I probably didn't even need to play it again. My opinions on it are pretty much the same as they were beforehand, although I did value getting one last refresher, especially now that it's in context with the Galaxy games and 3D Land. But one thing I promised myself way back when I started this project was that I would not force myself to 100% complete the game again. Just beating all the levels would suffice. Oh? Huh. Here's a video clip of me getting the final stamp in the game again. And oh god. There's the 5 stars on the profile. Crap, why am I like this? The story in Super Mario 3D World isn't all that much, but it's like sorta a bit more than usual, kinda. One evening, Mario, his brother Luigi, their completely platonic friend Princess Peach, and a random blue toad are just walking outside of Peach's castle during some sort of fireworks festival. They come upon a broken and transparent warp pipe, and the brothers, being plumbers or carpenters, fix it up in a jiffy. Once fixed, many of the new elements from the game come spewing out the top, including the new power-ups, some baseballs, some normal Mario items for good measure, and then this little guy peeks her head out. She's a Sprixie, like Pixie, I guess, and warns the group that Bowser has captured her friends. Well, it turns out Bowser captures her too, popping from this same pipe. He snacks her in this big glass jar before disappearing back through the opening. Taking the initiative, Peach jumps in to give chase to the King Koopa quickly, followed by Mario and the Toad. Eventually, by a now readied Luigi, and the group travel to the Sprixie Kingdom. Here, the group chase Bowser and his minions through the 6 Sprixie worlds, through Bowser's castle, and then through Bowser's carnival. After fighting Furry Bowser, the group rescue all the Sprixies and blast Bowser off into the distance. And even later still, the Sprixies build a rocket so that the group can recruit Princess Rosalina, who is here now too for some reason. Remember when she only came around every 100 years? Yeah, me neither. At the top, 3D World has 4 characters, with the 5th added early on in the postgame, and playing as each character is an absolute dream. The movement mechanics are largely the same as in 3D Land, but the controls and physics have been polished to the nth degree. Each character can walk or run around, everyone can jump, crouch jump, side somersault jump, wall jump, and long jump. Additionally, rolling and roll jumps have made their second appearance. 2 things make these feel much better in World than Land. The obvious change is the upgrade from the 3DS thumbpad to an actual joystick. But every aspect of the game movement was improved too. Everyone is just a bit faster, their jumps, especially the long jumps, carry a bit further. Momentum is especially good in World, it is much easier to gain it and keep it running. And all of this is enhanced in the Switch port. The speed was marginally increased across the game, making for a fast and fluid experience. And having taken inspiration from the next game in the series, everyone can now ground pound and roll into pipes, or jump much higher right after ground pounding, and it's all really fun. All 5 of the playable characters control the same, but their physics differ. Mario is the balanced character, he has decent speed, average jump height, and stops on a dime. Luigi runs a little bit faster, jumps much higher, but is so gosh darn slippery. Peach is real slow, but can hover in the air while she jumps. Toad is real quick, but it has the smallest of the jumps. And Rosalina is the slowest of everyone, her jump is average, but she inherits the spin move from Galaxy. This works as both an attack and a slight double jump. My preference has always been to just play as Mario, but Rosalina's spin makes her my next favorite. She's also the easiest character to play as, which is a bit of a shame that she's unlocked so late in the game. 3D World is organized into 8 main worlds with 4 extra worlds in the postgame. While the last has only 3 stages, they are the hardest. The world maps are fully open, and while the levels and side activities are usually linked by a path, it's one the player need not follow. As the players navigate the world map, sometimes coins or 1-ups can be found, as well as hidden pipes that lead to secret levels. Certain levels will initially be blocked off, requiring a certain amount of green stars collected before unlocking. And aside from a couple of bosses, most of the locked levels are the more challenging of the 2 available, so that newer or less experienced players always have a way through to the end. Across the world, there are a few different activities, the most common being item houses. The second most common are blockades, where some enemies will block the level progression until beaten. Less common are the mystery boxes. These are a series of small challenges that involve collecting a green star within 10 seconds. Sometimes the challenge is to defeat enemies quickly, other times to press a button. A few are to get to the star quickly. Captain Toad makes his return, this time with really clever puzzle levels. The player has to navigate Captain Toad through a rotatable 3D puzzle to collect all 5 green stars while avoiding hazards, with a twist that Toad can neither jump nor run. These are so fun in this game, so much so that he got his own spin-off a few years later. Each level is laid out similarly to Mario 3D Land. Each player starts out at the beginning of the level with the camera pointed in the general direction of forward. Most of the time the game relies on the player running in that direction, usually either up or to the right, crossing any number of obstacles and attempting to reach the top of the flagpole. I say usually because auto-scrolling levels do return once more. Within each level are 3 main collectibles to find. Returning from Galaxy 2 and replacing Land's star coins are the 3 green stars, each hidden just out of sight, within a mystery box, behind a puzzle, or just in a hard-to-reach place. There is also a hidden stamp in each level and are hidden similarly to the green stars. Lastly, and it's a bit of a stretch to call it a collectible, but getting to the top of the flagpole is required for completion. Luckily, it's much easier this time around. There's a wider hitbox to get to the top. It almost feels like a magnetic pull at times, and most of the levels are designed to make it incredibly easy. Thinking back, I don't think I was ever truly upset at any of the collectible locations. Sure, a few relied on retaining a power-up given at the start of the level, but even that is at least a test of skill. I can only think of a couple examples where I had to get an item from another level to get a star or stamp in this one, and those were frustrating, but these couple examples were a far cry from how often it happened in Land. Speaking of power-ups, every item from 3D Land returns from 3D World with 3 new and 1 newish item. Mushrooms return, fire flowers work the same, but fireballs can be thrown through the clear pipes to reach further enemies, the boomerang suit can still collect items from the distance, and Tanuki suits let the player spin and hover as in Land. With the only noticeable change being, for whatever reason, this suit gives the princesses some dump trucks. I mean, wow! Also, if the player dies 5 or more times in a regular level, the Super Tanuki suit returns as an easy mode, but this does remove the sparkles from the file select stars, so be warned. The superstar is also here, but for the most part is only doled out to give the player an easy 1-up. As for the newer power-ups, the new-ish item is the Mega Mushroom, originally from the new Super Mario Bros. Series. It's only given in maybe 4 or 5 levels, but each time it's used leads to some really clever gameplay, albeit gameplay that's probably not fun for the other 3 players. And the 3 truly new items are the Super Bell, Lucky Bell, and Double Cherries. Both of the bells give the player the cat suit, with the Lucky suit turning the player into a statue when ground pounding. And the cat suit is such a versatile piece of equipment. The player can swipe at enemies to defeat them, climb up walls for a short distance, raise platforms, have a diagonal glide when swiping in the air, and can climb up the flagpole to get to the top with ease. So much of the game is designed around the catsuit. Many secrets are at the tops of walls, enemies are much easier to defeat with it, plus it's just so cute seeing everyone dressed up as a little kitty cat. In comparison, the Double Cherries aren't the most interesting but lead to some pretty fun challenges. As the name implies, eating one creates a clone of the player that follows all the same inputs, and eating more cherries creates more clones. But these clones only have a single hit before they disappear, so the challenge is often to get through the level with as many clones as possible. Power-ups aren't the only items in the game, there are also a few things the player can either wear around or hold. Returning from land is the propeller box, which is underutilized, and the coin box, which as the player moves, coins pop out. I especially love the confetti explosion when the coin box runs out. New headwear includes the cannon block, the light box, and the Goomba mask. The cannon shoots cannonballs out to defeat enemies or destroy blocks. The light box projects a cone of light that can destroy boos, and I'm Gonkenba? How? The Gonken Bomb mask makes it so enemies don't attack their wearer. As for grabbables, there are ice skates, piranha plants, baseballs, snowballs, and bombs. None of them are used extensively throughout the game, but aside from the ice skate, each is given a really good moment to shine. It's fun tossing baseballs to collect green stars just out of reach, or tossing bombs to obliterate enemies always feels pretty good. Of the wearables, the cannon by far has the most creative usages, and while sometimes difficult to aim, I really enjoyed using it. Every stage has a different combination of power-ups, items, and platforming puzzles to create fun and interesting experiences, and each new element is just as creative as the last. The clear pipes were utilized in multiple different ways, often there to get from one area of the level to the next, or for enemies to sneak up on the player, or as a sneaky way to get secrets, and it was always visually entertaining to watch the characters zoom through them. Some of my personal favorites were the red-blue panels that flip whenever a character jumps, the beat blocks that change in tempo with the music, or the dash panels that make characters run super fast. Some features that utilize the touch on the Wii U tablet have been adapted to gyro sensors in the Joy-Cons. While this works, it winds up feeling awkward. Regardless, there are so many levels in the game that are memorable solely due to being fun, and they pop up through each of the worlds up until the very end of the game. Plenty of enemies make their return in 3D World, including everyone's favorite Biddy Buddies. Stacks of Goombas are utilized quite extensively, and some of my personal favorites, the Bullies from Mario 64 and the Charge and Chucks from Mario World, make long-awaited appearances. And the list of new enemies is even longer. The two most striking are Goombas and Bullet Bills that have tasted the cat. The Goombas jump up and do a little aerial dash, and the Bullet Bills basically become homing missiles. I also really enjoyed how the conch doors looked, and the boulders were utilized in really fun ways both in puzzles and combat. Bosses really nailed it this time around. Aside from Boom Boom and Pom Pom, who are just as easy as they were in Land, every boss in this game is fun. They all managed to put really good twists on the hit them 3 times mechanic. Bowser's first 2 fights have him harking the player from his lowrider. The Histocrat utilizes the catsuit well, the Motley Boss Blob utilizes the double cherry well, and I especially love that the final furry Bowser fight. This time around, Bowser utilizes both the catsuit and the double cherry against the players as they climb his tower, where it becomes a challenge to simply stay alive. 3D Land might have had an extensive post-game, both by doubling the level count from the main game and requiring both Mario and Luigi to beat them all. 3D World's post-game is significantly smaller but manages to make a much more cohesive story, until it's not. Of the 4 new worlds, the first, World Star, consists of entirely new levels. These are by far the hardest levels thus far and pose a really fun challenge. And even this late in the game, so many of these levels are so memorable, like the shooter type level or the one where the flagpole runs away. The next 2 worlds, Mushroom and Flower, consist of remixes of previous stages similar to how 3D Land did it. Sometimes whole levels, sometimes just chunks of them were taken and modified to be harder. While these are less memorable due to their repeated nature, they're all really good challenges. The World Crown is unlocked when every green star, stamp, and flagpole have been collected. Doing so unlocks the final 3 levels: the final Captain Toad challenge, the final Mystery Box, and Champion's Road. The Captain Toad level is technically harder than the others, but none ever get too hard. The Mystery Box is a gauntlet where the player has to solve 30 remixed challenges in a row, and while I've memorized each at this point, this can certainly be a challenge. But Champion's Road, ooh, this is a good level. It's hard, so hard, but incredibly good. It takes many elements from the game and puts them together in fascinating and brutal combinations. It's long, each segment is harder than the last, and the only reward is to say I've done it, but oh boy does it feel good to say. This is the only level in the game I don't mind having to play 5 different times. Because as I mentioned at the top, to complete the game I had to play everything 5 times. Everything. When World Crown unlocks, the level select displays what characters have beaten that level. When one character has beaten every stage, their final character stamp is unlocked. 5 different playthroughs unlock the 5 final stamps, and that 5th beautiful star on the file select. Of course, there are ways to largely get around this. Multiplayer is the intended way, but if extra controllers are collected, they can all bubble while one actually beats the level. I did not do this because there is something wrong with me. At the very least, I recommend beating Champion's Road with all 5 characters. It's fun to see how it was designed to accommodate their unique traits. The visual design of 3D World might be the biggest whiff. Yeah, the game looks good, but unoriginal. All the character models shine, all the levels and environments are pretty, but none of it makes cohesive sense. Most areas throw out thematic consistency entirely. Levels of differing themes are all jumbled together, and I understand why this happened. From a gameplay perspective, too many of the same theme would get boring to watch. Plus, it would be easier to sort by difficulty. But as a whole, it makes it so the Sprixie Kingdom doesn't actually feel like a place. Compared to the Galaxy games, even with Galaxy 2's more linear approach, each of those galaxies still have so much more character than any stage in 3D World. World only feels like a series of levels within some pretty looking maps. And even worse, 3D World released well within the year of Luigi. This means that after beating furry Bowser, Luigi Bros, a Luigi-based mod of the original Mario Bros arcade game, is unlocked. As well as throughout the game, so many Luigi sprites show up. They're hidden behind walls and blocks, in confetti, on pipes, they're everywhere. And it's terrible. But where the visual design was the weakest aspect, the soundtrack might be the strongest. The OST was composed by Mahito Yokota, Toru Minagashim, Koji Kondo, and Yasuaki Iwata, and was performed by a big band that was brought together for the game. Where the Galaxy games took place in space and had an appropriate sound to match, 3D Worlds took place back on land, and the composers wanted this feeling to match too. With that, they decided on a much jazzier approach to the soundtrack, and I absolutely love every track. The band used heavy trumpet, sax, and the occasional electric guitar, and every piece of music makes you want to start dancing. I mean, just listen to this one real quick. almost every song is this good, especially when this main theme comes back up. Plus, we got reorchestrations of the Gusty Garden Galaxy theme and the Mario Bros. 2 USA theme, so it's all around bangers. Super Mario 3D World is an excellent game. Not only are so many of the levels so fun and creative to play through, the fact that they account for 5 different characters and are playable with up to 4 people at a time is just truly amazing. And with the refined physics coming in the Switch version and the killer soundtrack, it's really hard to find glaring problems with the game. But gameplay mechanics weren't the only thing updated by the Switch port. Bowser's Fury is an add-on expansion released along with Super Mario 3D World for the Nintendo Switch. The game was released worldwide on February 12, 2021, but not much is currently known about the development cycle. Even in the credits, the developers are listed in alphabetical order, so it's hard to say exactly how the game came together. Given the game's shorter nature and its inclusion with 3D World, I'm considering a DLC in lieu of being a standalone title. With how recently it released, I actually remember the day I started playing Bowser's Fury pretty vividly. I was impatiently waiting for the game to be delivered while I toiled away at work. As soon as I got the notification, I leapt from my desk, tore open the packaging, and jumped right in. I wanted to experience the new stuff first, so I started with Bowser's Fury, only replaying 3D World after. And don't tell my boss that I did this during work hours. At first, I was amazed with the premise. I loved the open world design and the level designs were great. Of course, I had my share of complaints too, but getting this new, unexpected Mario stuff really skewed my opinion to be generally more positive. And so as I hopped back into Bowser's Fury, I did so with the expectation that I would probably only be refining my opinions, not generating new ones. The story in Bowser's Fury is another interesting one. Mario is walking just outside of Peach's castle when he comes upon a trail of icky paint-like goop. This leads him to a black graffiti M painted in the same way as done in Super Mario Sunshine. Hey, check that out! They're pandering to people like me! I love it! Either way, the M turns into a portal that wisps Mario to Lake Lapcat. He's then attacked by a big, goopy, all-black Bowser known as Fury Bowser, and is only calmed down after Mario collects a cat shine. Hey, they're called shines! That's more pandering! Afterwards, he runs into Bowser Jr., who explains that Bowser got possessed somehow and needs Mario's help to fix him. Mario relents and the two travel the lake, collecting enough shines to unlock the Gigabells. These turn Mario into a big cat that is able to whoop Fury Bowser. After doing so 3 times, Bowser is de-goopified but still possessed. He captures all 3 Gigabells in a magic ball, and Mario gives chase with the help of Plessy. After smashing the ball, Mario and Plessy turn into a super really big Cat Mario and Cat Plessy, and bonk, Bowser out of frame. Afterwards, we're treated to a fun scene where Junior calms down Bowser, who is ready to attack Mario on sight. And during the credits, through a series of fun illustrations painted by Bowser Jr., we learn that he tried to use his magic paintbrush to help his dad when he got hurt, but it had the inverse effect instead, turning Bowser into the goopy mess from the game. And the game itself is separated into a series of different levels. However, unlike in 3D World, where the levels are isolated and selected from a world map, every level here is floating somewhere along Lake Lapcat. Each level has 5 different shines, and while the types of shines become pretty algorithmic, it's more than made up for with the level design. Every level is so fun to traverse. They all utilize level mechanics from 3D World but are optimized for the more open world approach Bowser's Fury has taken. And some mechanics that were underutilized in 3D World, like the propeller hat or the ice skate, are used in really fun ways in Fury. The shines all fall into the same few categories. Get to the top, find the cat shards, defeat Fury Luigi, find the key and bring it to the start of the level, or collect all the blue coins before the timer runs out, good luck. But only 2 are active from the start. Mario needs to head to another level first and collect some shines in that one before returning to the previous level. Once doing so, the level will change slightly, usually with different enemies about. Luckily, the game only has 12 levels, so this formula only gets a little old by the end. While some levels Mario can just run to, some have miles of open lake in between. For this, Plessy has been redesigned to get Mario from point A to point B. Plessy pops out of the water whenever Mario gets close and can dash across the lake with ease. He can either hop or dive, both being used to get a few different Plessy-specific shines. They're few and far between, and all of them boil down to racing Plessy to an end goal quickly, but they break up the pacing well. I do wish there were more of them, because the open waters between levels wind up feeling pretty empty even with these extra shines. All of these levels are well and good, but Bowser is ever on the horizon. As Mario explores, his shell will slowly rise from the goop. When fully charged, he'll jump out and initiate Fury Bowser. This changes the sky black. Chunks of stone rain from the sky, and Bowser will blast beams at Mario on a regular basis. A few stones in each level are only broken by these blasts, so it's wise to head to them whenever this mode starts. After a few attacks, Bowser will up and retreat, but by collecting a shine during these segments, not only will he retreat immediately, but some of his overall health will be depleted a bit. Or if enough shines have been collected, Mario can collect the Giga Bell to fight off Bowser mono-e-mono. These boss fights are pretty sick, and in the end made for really fun interactive kaiju fights. Initially, the Fury Bowser segments were really fun. They added a sense of urgency. The easiest way to end them is to get a shine, so the race to unlock whatever one is closest while dodging his various attacks is a stressful romp. But they just happen too often. Initially, it's every few minutes or so, but each time Mario beats him, the timer gets smaller and smaller, to the point where during the endgame it feels like there's no time to explore anymore. He is constantly appearing, and if there's no shine nearby, the only ways to send him back are to wait like 5 minutes or to kill Mario, and neither of these are fun options. Aside from Fury Bowser being too common, my other complaint is, well, that Bowser's Fury is running on the 3D World engine. To run, I have to press Y. To move the camera, I have to use the right joystick. This makes it incredibly difficult to run while moving the camera. And in an open world game where oftentimes I want to run, hold an item, and look around, it becomes really frustrating. Now in the game's defense, most of the time where open exploration is needed, I usually didn't need to run, but for the few side quests where I was holding a kitty or a key, I wound up having this fun hook hand, where I continued to hold run with my thumb, but wrapped around my index finger to move the camera. I was frustrated with this the first time I played, and I am still frustrated now. Aesthetically, the game looks pretty good. All the enemies have been given cute cat makeovers and they're all adorable. The skybox isn't the most interesting, but I liked the small detail of the snow-capped mountains off in the distance. Unfortunately, the frame rate did drop quite a bit when there was too much on screen, and the areas in between the levels are fairly boring. They are 7.8 too much water. The music is all fun. I can only assume it was done by mostly the same people as 3D World, but again, I haven't found much about who worked on this. The music all fits thematically with 3D World, but is mostly new compositions. I can't say I liked any of the new tracks as much as those in 3D World, but they did a good job regardless. I especially liked the few moments where some of the 3D World themes snuck their way into these new compositions. Overall, while not the best Mario, I really enjoyed Bowser's Fury. The levels continued to be fun, the Fury mechanic was really good but got overused towards the end, and I really like the idea of an open-world Mario game. Even if the game didn't nail the areas in between levels, I'm really excited to see how this design ethos is implemented in further games. I could easily see a whole game consisting of maybe 3 or 4 areas similar to Lake Lapcat, with some polish to make the areas in between more interesting. And here is the hardest part of this review. Where the hell am I gonna rank this? I have very few problems with Super Mario 3D World, and excluding completionist gripes, I have basically none. It also pushes my narrative of Mario 2 USA being a real Mario game, which is good, because it means I'm right. And with the addition of Bowser's Fury, an experience that is not my favorite but still really fun and a great look at what is to come, I don't know how I couldn't rank this game high. Initially, I know for a fact that it will be better than Super Mario Sunshine. But how do I rank this among the Galaxy games? Each level isn't as visually interesting in 3D World, the gravity mechanic is really cool, I love exploring the Comet Observatory and to a lesser extent the Starship Mario, but the Galaxy games were slower paced and had a lot of downtime between stars, where 3D World is much quicker to gameplay. They all have Captain Toad, they all have Rosalina. Only 2 of them forced me to play as Luigi for completion. 3D World was released during the year of Luigi. This is a bad thing. And 3D World doesn't have penguins in it. Also bad. Okay, I've decided. My new ranking of 3D Mario games is 6 Super Mario 3D Land, 5 Super Mario 64, 4 Super Mario Sunshine, 3 Super Mario Galaxy, 2 Super Mario Galaxy 2, and one Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. I realized that I was trying to find reasons not to put 3D World at the top. For all the complaints I have against the Wii U, it managed to put out a really good Mario game. And now we only have one game left. I haven't played this game since 2018, so I'm ready to jump up Superstar once more. Of course I am dreading ranking it against the juggernaut that is the top 3, but I'm up for the challenge. Up next, our ultimate Mario game, Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch. Odyssey had a rare worldwide release on October 27th of 2017, only a few months after the Switch and Breath of the Wild launched. And given the popularity of the Switch, Odyssey went on to become one of the best-selling games of that year and the quickest-selling Mario game of all time, as well as receiving heaps and heaps of praise, for myself included. Now, back when the Switch had its first reveal trailer, I was pretty skeptical, but even if my co-workers at the time hadn't convinced me to snag a pre-order, I would have for sure had one by the time Odyssey launched. I was unimaginably excited for this game in a way I haven't been since, and for good reason. The game trailered incredibly well. Mario could control a T-Rex, Jump Up Superstar was a bop, and Nintendo was finally making a more open sandbox game akin to 64 or Sunshine. They even promoted it that way. There was not a world where I wouldn't be buying this game on day one. And buy this game I did. In fact, I bought it twice even. See, excitedly, the first day I could, I snagged the pre-order for Odyssey and the associated amiibo off of Amazon. But as the launch drew closer, I realized I did not want to wait for some time on the afternoon of the 27th. I wanted to play it the night of the 26th with everyone else. So I did what any sane and normal person would do. I pre-ordered another copy from the local GameStop, had my roommate pick it up for me while I was at work, played it all night, and the next day after my Amazon copy was delivered, I walked to the GameStop and returned it for a full cash refund. I am the normal one in this situation. Obviously, I went on to play the absolute heck out of Odyssey. After the launch, I asked my co-worker if it'd be okay if I just played Odyssey after I gave the intro lecture. I was a TA at the time. Luckily, the class size was really small for this section. I only had to answer like a single question. I played Odyssey the rest of the time. At that point, I was in Shiveria. Towards the end of 2017, I erroneously considered Odyssey my game of the year over Breath of the Wild. I've since rescinded that statement, but the sentiment still holds. I really loved it. Over 2017 and 2018, I completed the game once and immediately played through the game again, this time trying to collect as many moons as I could by only traveling through the warp paintings. Needless to say, I really loved Odyssey. It's even the reason why I know how to spell Odyssey. I even have the Odyssey cereal box. I guess the cereal is in there too, I never ate it. Heard it was bad. The cereal in my box is definitely bad at this point. But after my second playthrough, I left the game alone until my most recent. I never went back to get any of the new outfits or try Luigi's Balloon Hunt DLC. And hopefully the 4.5 years in between playthroughs would hopefully make the experience fresh for me once again. There is a lot known about the development of Super Mario Odyssey, given how recent it was released and how talkative the public is forcing Nintendo to become. So many tasty tidbits were learned about this specific cycle. Odyssey was mainly developed by Nintendo's Entertainment Planning and Development Division, you know, the ones what did the other 3D Marios, with additional support from 1UP Studio. The game was produced by Yoshiaki Koizumi and Koichi Hayashida, returning from 3D World, and was directed by Kenta Motokura. Mario's dad, Shigeru Miyamoto, was the creative fellow of the group, which apparently meant the team asked him questions and he'd give feedback, which I'm assuming was in the style of the thumbs up gif from a while back. Early on, the team devised a whole bunch of ideas to put in the game, much like with 3D World, but this time they wanted to target the quote-unquote core audience. As such, they landed on harkening back to the early 3D games with a more open level design. With this decision, and using Mario Bros. 3 as inspiration, the team decided that Mario would travel to different kingdoms and explore the various new mechanics there. Sometimes kingdoms were created with ideas fitted to be placed within. Other times, ideas were created and entire kingdoms were built around them. This early design process also led to the new main mechanic of Odyssey, Cappy. Early on, they wanted to use the motion controls of the Joy-Cons, later deciding Mario's cap would be controlled by them, and later still deciding to make the cap his own character. The team wanted Mario to have a buddy for this adventure, and what better buddy than his own hat? Another goal was for all the other characters and locations to feel unique to the Mario universe. Some feel like they fit right in, just another beach or snow level, and sometimes Mario's hopping around a real city with real human beings, or infiltrating a Japanese-style castle. Speaking of Odysseys within the Mario universe, Odyssey is the first game to have vocal music tracks. Jump Up Superstar was written by the game's lead composer Naoto Kubo and sung by Kate Higgins. Kubo also wrote the final battle theme, Break Free, Lead the Way. Both were written in Japanese and translated to English for Higgins to perform. While New Donk City and Jump Up Superstar wind up being very jazzy, each of the other kingdoms gets their own musical motif, all of which were written by Kubo in collaboration with Shiho Fuji and the GOAT Koji Kondo. So the moon is a big part of Odyssey. It's where the climax occurs, the collectibles are power moons, but why are bunnies everywhere? Apparently, in certain Eastern cultures, they see a rabbit depicted on the face of the moon instead of what the West generally refers to as a face. Thus, bunnies were all chosen to be all over the game. And my favorite tidbit of this game's development, Super Mario Odyssey was the first Super Mario game to draw direct inspiration from the relatively unknown indie video game, Minecraft. The team was worried too much camera control would be hard for the youth, but due to the popularity of Minecraft with children, Nintendo decided that Super Mario 2 could have direct control of the camera. Super Mario Odyssey opens with a battle. Mario has confronted Bowser on his airship, the latter donning a stunning white tux with Peach in tow. Bowser tells Mario of his plans to wed the princess, then flings his top hat at the plumber. Mario swiftly dodges out of the way, losing his own cap in the process. What he does not dodge is the fact that Bowser's hat is a boomerang now, too, I guess. Mario is thrown asunder, plunging into the unknown. He's awoken by a ghost hat individual, Cappy, who informs Mario that Bowser also kidnapped his sister, Tiara, and the two give Bowser and his hired goons, the Brutals, chase. Bowser steals wedding decorations from each of the various kingdoms he invades, culminating with a wedding on the moon. Mario crashes it much like that scene from The Graduate, fights Bowser, gets stranded in the crumbling moon core, takes control of Bowser's body to escape, and they both get rejected hard by Peach, resulting in the eventuality that is Bowsette. At least that's what I took out of it anyway. The game starts out in the city of Bonanza within the Cap Kingdom, where the game quickly teaches the basics of how to move. Mario's got all his favorite abilities. He's got all the jumps, the triples, the longs, the walls, the sides, somersaults. I'm also real happy that the backward somersault is now instantaneous instead of requiring a short charge time. The roll is back and can be rhythmically timed to keep up the speed across longer distances. By rolling in air, Mario can perform a dive once again, and is a really good move for reaching platforms a little too far away. After garnering a friendship with Cappy, Mario's also able to throw him around too. While using the face buttons, Mario mainly throws Cappy forward as a long-range attack. By holding down the button, Cappy becomes a platform that'll automatically bounce Mario up a short distance. But Mario can throw Cappy while in mid-air, even mid-long jump. This resets his movement options, and by diving into Cappy, Mario can get even more air and gets the ability to dive again, making for huge potential distances to be covered. Every movement ability utilized in concert with one another makes for an incredibly fun gameplay experience. Swimming is also good. Mario stays on the surface for a bit, but starts sinking after a while and must swim back up. But this time by diving underwater, he propels forward rapidly. It's a nice addition, and as a whole is so much better than the full 3D movement of the Galaxy games. While utilizing the wonderful motion controls of the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, Cappy also gains a few other moves. By regularly flicking the controller, it goes forward as normal, but by twisting it correctly, Cappy spins in a circle around Mario, or can be thrown up or down. I don't actually know. I played handheld my first 2 playthroughs, and this time around I could never get any of these moves to work when I wanted them to. It also became really annoying when I wanted to move my hand, to scratch my nose, or to simply just put the Joy-Con down. Cappy would shoot out with the slightest of movement. The one saving grace of the motion controls is the homing throw. While standing still, if a hat icon appears above an enemy or obstacle, wagging the Joy-Con will auto-target that enemy, which is really useful for a couple of later puzzles. Mario is much more fluid this time around. Running around is quick to get started, fast to stop, and he responds to controller inputs on a dime. I speak a lot of high praise for Mario 3D World with how fun it is to control, yet somehow Nintendo PND found even more ways to tighten the physics. I'm sure no longer needing to hold a button to run helps, but Nintendo's focus on making the gameplay at a crisp 60 frames per second certainly carries a large part of that burden. Fairly quickly after Mario's crash landing in Bonanza, Cappy introduces the new gimmick of Odyssey, the capture mechanic. See, by throwing Cappy at a hatless individual, he is able to take Mario's consciousness and put it into this other being. By throwing it at a frog, the frog now dons a mustache and a hat and is under the complete control of Mario. And there are numerous capture abilities throughout the game. The frog lets Mario jump super high, Goombas can be stacked atop one another, bullet bills fly far distances rapidly, T-Rexes let Mario rampage through enemies and obstacles with ease. There are two main types of enemies within Odyssey, larger enemies that can be captured or smaller enemies that get swatted. The former are utilized pretty extensively throughout the game for either puzzles or forward progression, and the latter are just kinda annoying. My biggest and really only complaint with the capture abilities is many gain extra abilities while using motion controls. Bullet bills fly much faster, lava bubbles swim much faster, frogs jump much higher. While playing as a Cheep Cheep, Mario's only attack is mapped to the waggle. And the worst part, there are a few puzzles in the game that require these motion controls, making playing solely handheld an impossibility. And a minor complaint, Mario climbs faster by shaking the Joy-Cons, which led me to physically shaking my entire Switch to make it go faster. The other really neat mechanic is Mario's ability to become 2D again. There are block pipes spread across the lands. Upon entering, Mario turns into a sprite based heavily on his original appearance in Super Mario Bros., and he controls similarly. Mario can't capture enemies in these sections, but he does gain the ability to run once more. And I really liked how these sections are mapped onto 3D objects, making for some really fun warping around curves or even going upside down, and they break up the 3D sections incredibly well. Back to Bonanza, after trekking to the top of the big hat-shaped tower, Mario is introduced to Bowser's hired goons, the main bosses of the game, the Broodals. The Broodals have helped Bowser steal something from each of the kingdoms, and each need to be fought twice, with a third time in the post-game. They are all also super easy, only becoming a challenge when the post-game tasks Mario to beat them all in one life. But the Broodals aren't the only baddies fought. Bowser himself is battled twice, and his fights are really fun. And occasionally throughout, Bowser and or the Broodals have hired other guys to terrorize the plumber. These other guys are by far the best fights in the game and usually utilize the world-specific copy abilities. The mechanical Wiggler is fought by controlling a tank, the big balding squid is used by shooting water from above by a gushin, and there's also a straight-up dragon. He's fought Mano y Sombrero, but it's really cool, and entirely unexpected. The final boss isn't even fighting Bowser, it's Mario controlling Bowser, and racing through the crumbling innards of the moon while clawing at oncoming boulders and smashing through walls, all while a great pop song plays. Despite the Broodals being only so-so, Odyssey has by far the best bosses of any 3D Mario game. After defeating the first of the Broodals, Mario and Cappy travel to the neighboring kingdom in search of their new ship, the Odyssey. In order to power it, the duo must search each kingdom they visit for the game's key collectibles, Power Moons. There are roughly 2 ways of getting moons. Each kingdom has a series of story missions, and also there are a whole bunch of moons everywhere else too. Regardless of how they're collected, every kingdom has a minimum required in order to proceed to the next. Aside from moons, there are 3 other collectibles. Coins make their return, of course, and this time are used to buy outfits. There are a lot of wacky and cool outfits in the game, and it's a lot of fun dressing up Mario in them all. But I'm also an idiot, so as soon as I unlocked the Mario Sunshine Shades and Shine Sprite shirt, I left it on the entire time. The coins double as the only penalty for dying. Mario loses 10 each time. The pockets of coins hidden in harder to reach areas are also incredibly satisfying. It's great to run through huge stacks of coins collecting them all. There are also kingdom-unique purple coins hidden throughout each area. There are a limited amount in each kingdom and are used to buy kingdom-related outfits or stickers and trinkets to display on and in the Odyssey respectively. Be careful with these though, oftentimes there will be 3 or 4 left, which leads to scouring the entire kingdom once over to find the one place missed. Lastly, there are hearts. They fill Mario's health, or the life up heart gives Mario 3 additional temporary hit points. While there are 12 main kingdoms, each is organized pretty much the same way. Bowser and the Brutals have done something bad, so Mario needs to do between 1 to 5 missions to fix everything up, depending on the size of the kingdom. These missions usually culminate in a boss battle. Both boss battles and major accomplishments reward a triple moon, whereas the minor missions only give a single moon. But as Mario treks between missions, there are a whole bunch of other moons to be found in the interim. Even if I wanted to, I don't think I could list every type of power moon strewn about this game. Some of them are out in the open, some are hidden just under the surface and Mario needs to ground pound to unearth them. Some are cleverly hidden behind a wall or obstacle. Some are in a block that needs to be exploded by a bullet bill. Some are bought with cold hard cash. One requires Mario to dress up in just his undies. My personal favorites are the side areas throughout each kingdom. Behind a door, a pipe taking control of a rocket and shooting to the clouds, these lead to linear section-off levels, much like the floodless sections of Sunshine. Sometimes these are platforming sections, others utilize one of the captures in a fun way, but they add in much needed stages to what is otherwise just a really fun exploration game. Odyssey is designed so that finding a plethora of moons during the main missions just happens. Even with the most minimal of exploring, it's easy to have the required moons by the time the final mission is completed, oftentimes well before. Compartmentalizing the game to be just linear missions with some exploration along the way makes Mario Odyssey an okay experience. There's some fun puzzles, tight platforming, and the aforementioned really fun bosses, but aside from the bosses, pretty much every other Mario game does it better. However, as a game about exploring vast playgrounds full of goodies, there is nothing better. On this playthrough, I once again did the thing where I tried to maximize the amount of moons to put away at once via the painting teleports. So while the main campaign was super short, this did mean that when the post-game opened up to me, I had a truly fantastic time. These levels are so wonderfully built with secrets around every turn. No matter which corner or alley Mario finds himself in, there will always be some sort of collectible, and it feels good to constantly make those numbers go up. During the post-game, even more kingdoms are unlocked and extra moons are added to the previous ones. The most substantial addition is the Mushroom Kingdom is fully explorable. There's a whole bunch of new moons to find, levels to beat, and Mario can capture Yoshi. After collecting enough moons, 2 extra places on the moon become available. The dark side is a Brutals boss gauntlet that is probably the hardest part of the game. And after beating it, a bunch of hint art and new levels are unlocked. About 12 more hint arts are found that are harder than those from the base game, and a few levels from the base game have been remixed and remade to be much harder. Lastly, as is the tradition since Galaxy 2, the darker side of the moon is the ultimate challenge level, combining many of the gameplay elements from the base game in a 15-minute long, extra hard level. It's actually really easy though, easiest of the 4 ultimate levels by far. It does a good job of celebrating the game, but it doesn't have a good enough challenge. The final dialogue after beating it is really nice though. But taking the whole game into account, Odyssey has the most in-game to do than any other Mario game, barring multiple playthroughs for completion. The team did a really good job of making each world distinct both visually and stylistically. Every kingdom gets its own theme to set the tone, and all of them manage to sound completely different from one another. The soundtrack is all really well done. Every song feels like it's part of the same game despite some being in wildly different genres. Additionally, the graphics almost feel different for each. The architecture and sand dunes from Tostarena look completely different from the high rises of New Donk City, which in turn look completely different from the low polygonal and brightly colored Mount Volbano. The game does a great job of making every kingdom feel unique and lived in, and it certainly helps that every single one of these areas graphically looks amazing. Nintendo sure knows how to optimize for its own consoles. And there has been some DLC. Most of it has been new outfits, which sucks. There was already some coin grinding required to get all the base outfits, and now I had to grind for thousands and thousands more to get the new ones too. But I did get my Mario Sunshine outfit, so I can't complain too much. Luigi's Balloon World was also added in early 2018. I I played a bit of it, it feels like it could be pretty fun, but wasn't for me. Mario basically either runs around the various levels and tries to hide a balloon, or searches out balloons other people have hidden. It's a good source of coins if the player is good, a mild amusement for me. And that is Super Mario Odyssey. Overall, it is an amazing package. There has never been a better controlling game. Cappy and the captures are a real fun twist, and searching each of these wonderfully laid out environments is some of the most fun I've had with a Mario. I especially loved exploring New Donk City. If I could get a game that was just a bunch of different parts of the Metro Kingdom, I would be okay with that. And even just replaying the NDC Festival still brings so many nostalgic emotions in me. It is such a fantastic celebration of what Mario is, and especially after playing all these games over the past year and a half, it's really hard not to be biased for the nostalgia alone. That being said, some of the exploration does take away from the level progression. While no Mario game has had good a sense of place as Odyssey, almost every other one has had better, linear platforming levels. And so it comes down to what I prefer in a Mario game. Let's run it through from the top. The Super Mario Galaxy games combine excellent, mostly linear levels with fantastic world building. The space theme does so much for them, and each of the galaxies manages to be memorable and fun. Mario 3D World tosses out most of the thematics but replaces it with fully linear and incredibly well designed levels. As a single player or presumably multiplayer experience, no 3D Mario game has a better designed set of levels. Super Mario Odyssey has almost no linearity to it. When it is, it's either very short or drowned out by the exploration, but the exploration is stunning. Odyssey has 13 truly brilliant playgrounds to explore, and no matter how much I love Sunshine and others love 64, none of their levels can compare. So do I like the Odyssey playgrounds over the Galaxy linearity and fun thematics? Do I like the Odyssey playgrounds over the stunning level design of 3D World? I also can take into account that 3D World was given some open world with Bowser's Fury, but it's still very different from Odyssey's open worlds. I cannot stress enough how hard this is for me to decide. Should I take into account completion criteria? Odyssey is so much better I don't have to replay anything with any extra characters. There is also so much more content in Odyssey. What about soundtracks? Aside from the lyrical ones, I like the Galaxy and 3D World soundtracks more. Okay, I think I've decided. My new and final ranking of three-dimensional Super Mario games is 7. Super Mario 3D Land, 6. Super Mario 64, 5. Super Mario Sunshine, 4. Super Mario Galaxy, 3. Super Mario Galaxy 2, 2. Super Mario Odyssey, and 1 Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. This was hard. Despite my love for Odyssey, the tight gameplay combined with the tight level design of 3D World edged out the fun playgrounds. Maybe. I might wake up tomorrow and decide I like open world exploration over linearity and swap any of the top 4 around. And I might still do that. Next, it is time to merge my 2D ranked list with my 3D ranked list to find the ultimate, mathematically, definitively best Mario game. And during this process, I hold the right to make any number of adjustments, so really, who's to say what my final list will be? We'll find out next. We have now mathematically, scientifically, geographically ranked every single 2D and 3D Super Mario game into their respective lists. But Super Mario in Review cannot be completed until we truly know what the ultimate Super Mario game is. As such, we will now merge these two lists together with the help of this tier maker that I just made. As a refresher, our two lists stand as follows. For the 2D rankings we have 11. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 10. Super Mario Land, 9. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 8. New Super Mario Bros. 2, 7. Super Mario Land 2, 6. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 5. New Super Mario Bros. 4. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, 3. Super Mario Bros. 2. Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1 Super Mario World. And for the 3D rankings we have 7 Super Mario 3D Land, 6 Super Mario 64, 5 Super Mario Sunshine, 4 Super Mario Galaxy, 3 Super Mario Galaxy 2, 2 Super Mario Odyssey, and 1 Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. And while the merging process will undoubtedly be messy, harrowing, tear-jerking, I would like to once again point out that this specific science is not exact. While I'm merging, I hold the right to, swap around any of these games. If today I like Galaxy 1 more than Galaxy 2, then it is in my right to just swap them. And with that, onto the merge sort. So you'll see here I have a tier maker where I've included all the logos I've been using from the list thus far into it. Now you'll notice at the bottom I have Super Mario Bros. You'll just have to trust me, this one is technically Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, which is currently at 11th of the 2D ranking, and I'm putting it here as a placeholder, just assuming it'll wind up here at the end. I'm also putting a somewhat good barometer at the very top with Super Mario World, or Super Rio Were, assuming that Super Mario World will be pretty close to the top, given it is my highest 2D ranked game. And so what we are going to do is we're going to start at the bottom of each of these lists and compare the two unsorted games. So right now 11th is the bottom with Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, and 7 is the bottom of the 3D ranking with Super Mario 3D Land. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare. Is Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels worse than Super Mario 3D Land? In this case, we will say yes, and therefore it pops up on the bottom. Up next, we have 10, Super Mario Land versus 7, Super Mario 3D Land. Now, this is an interesting one. Do I like the original Super Mario Land or the spiritual successor to Mario Land, with mainly just namesake alone? I think in this case, Super Mario 3D Land takes it. So next we will be adding Super Mario Land towards the bottom of the 2D ranked lists. Now, I think I'm going to try to sort most of these games into A, B, or C. I think Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, while not a terrible game, is easily the worst Super Mario game. I'm sorry, it just is. And then I'm going to hold S rank for the really, really special ones, which in this case is going to be Super Mario World, and we will see how many more get added to the S rank. So for now, Super Mario Land is going to be, Mario is going to be sorted into C. Up next we have 9, New Super Mario Bros. Wii versus 7, New Super Mario 3D Land. I also was really upset about New Super Mario Bros. Wii. I think it is technically a better game than Super Mario Land still, so we're not going to have any mix-ups just yet. But also, of the New Super Mario Bros. Series, it's not the least original, but it is the most frustrating. That is easily going to go at the bottom, just above Super Mario Land. 3D Land is better. Up next, New Super Mario Bros. 2 versus 7, Super Mario 3D Land. For much of the similar arguments why I sorted Wii worse than 3D Land, I think I'm probably going to sort New Super Mario Bros. 2 under 3D Land as well. Again, it's a better game than Wii, but it's still not as good as 3D Land. It just feels a lot better to play 3D Land. Up next, 7, Super Mario Land 2 versus 7, Super Mario 3D Land. So thus far, we've just tossed the bottom 4 of the 2D rankings on the bottom 4 of the list. But now we have our top 7s. How are these going to play out? I imagine it's going to go a little bit differently, eventually. But for now, Super Mario Land 2 is getting tossed at the bottom again. But I think I want to sort Mario Land 2 as a B game. I think it deserves that. Now, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA versus 7 Super Mario 3D Land. And here is where we're finally going to get our first 3D game on the list, because I think Super Mario Bros. 2 USA is a real darn good game, so much so that I'm weighing this being the first one that I shuffle the actual order of. So for now, the next is 7. Super Mario 3D Land has finally been dethroned as the bottom of the 3D list. I don't know. But we've once again evened out 6 on each list with 6 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA versus 6 Super Mario 64. Do I like Mario Bros. 2 more than Super Mario 64? I'm pretty down on Mario 64. Okay, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and swap this right now. I'm going to put Mario Bros. 2 up a spot. So now the 2D ranking is no longer 6 Mario 2, it is 6 New Super Mario Bros. Versus 6 Super Mario 64, and I'm gonna have to give it to Mario 64, so New Super Mario Bros. Is now getting added onto the list. Again, I really liked New Super Mario Bros. It was really refreshing to play it again, realize all the interesting things that they added, but it is still riffing off of what was done in Mario 3 and Mario World, and it wasn't able to reach as high of those peaks, whereas Mario 64, just pulling out of the hat, just blew away 3D platformers forever. How long will Mario 64 stay on this list? We will see. Speaking of, we once again have Super Mario Bros. 2 USA versus Mario 64 again, so I didn't really bump this problem at all for myself, huh, did I? I just delayed it a little bit. But I think I've come to a decision. Super Mario 64 is losing this one. I'm sorry all you Mario 64 stans. It's not that good. Now I am wondering if I should keep Mario 64 as the best B game, or move it to the lowest A game. I haven't decided that just yet. For now, it'll be the highest B. And with that, now we have 5 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA versus 5 Super Mario Sunshine. This one is a lot tougher for me. It's not going to be tough in the long run, because I understand what I need to do, but I do really love Mario Sunshine. It is definitely the nostalgia child for me. I have the most memories playing this as a kid, aside from another one that may or may not already be sorted at the top. Shout out to Super Mario Sunshine, it's given a little bit too much hate. But it is also now, I'm gonna sort it as our first A game, Suck It Mario 64. And now we have 5 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA versus 4 Super Mario Galaxy. Now I do feel the need to reiterate this. The top 4 of my 3D listed of games, I believe all 4 of these games are perfect. Each of them are perfect in their own way. And really, if you told me Super Mario Galaxy 2 was number 1, if Odyssey was 1, if Galaxy itself was 1, I'd be totally okay with that, because I think these games are fantastic. It's really a matter of what I prefer. But at the moment, I definitely prefer any of these top 4 games over Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. So that is what's losing this round. Up next, 2D number 4 is Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe versus 3D for Super Mario Galaxy. And for similar reasons as Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, I think New Super Mario Bros. U is a really good and a really big collection of solid Super Mario Bros. Levels. But the unoriginality is dreadful, whereas Galaxy is bursting at the seams with character. So you can barely even compare the two. Mario Galaxy is easily better than U Deluxe. And this is where the list is finally going to start getting excruciating. We have 3 Super Mario Bros. Versus 4 Super Mario Galaxy. Now, back at the very start, I do have a lot of complaints about Super Mario Bros. I think it deserves its place as the number 3 best 2D Super Mario Bros. Game, but also, I didn't have any of the same complaints with Super Mario Galaxy. Galaxy just plays better than Super Mario Bros., which is unfair, because Super Mario Bros. Was one of the first 2D games, Super Mario Galaxy was the 3rd 3D game, and went through thousands of revisions, but still, 3 loses this round. Super Mario Bros. 3 versus Super Mario Galaxy. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a very good game. Can I just call it? Can I just have an amalgamous? Oh yeah, 1, 2, Mario World, 3, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Odyssey, Galaxy 2, and Galaxy are all tied for number 1. Can I just do that? No. No, I cannot just do that. Super Mario 3 is real good. Mario Galaxy is real good. Also, I think we've moved up to S rank. All the rest of these games are S rank. I can also shuffle if I wanted. Do I think Mario 3 is better than Galaxy 2, but I think Galaxy is better than Mario 3? No, I think Mario 3 is better than Galaxy, I guess. At this point, it's a little arbitrary. I'm correct, and this list is scientifically accurate, but it's a little arbitrary. All of these games are just fantastic at this point. I'm gonna take off Super Mario World so I can add it back later. Super Mario Bros. 3 versus Super Mario Galaxy 2. At a certain point, you're really comparing apples and oranges. Maybe it's which one would I prefer to play right now, just at this second. Which one would I rather sit down and play? I'm still gonna say Mario 3. Galaxy 2 is getting added to the list. This just keeps getting harder and harder. Super Mario Bros. 3 versus Super Mario Odyssey. Which one is better? They're so completely different games. I'm gonna go with Odyssey on this one though. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a very good game, but there is another 2D platformer that I think blows it out of the water. But Odyssey is the best collectathon Mario has put out. So I'm gonna have to go with Mario 3 losing this round and getting sorted into the list. Again, S-rank games. They're all great. Don't at me. And we're on to our final 3. And at this point, it is no longer hard for me. I think I know how it's gonna shake out. 1 versus Super Mario World versus 2 Super Mario Odyssey is not what I'm going to be comparing anymore. Right now, I'm trying to decide if I want to keep 3D World at the top or I want to keep Odyssey at the top. Both of these games are fantastic, and they do such wildly different things. And honestly, at this point, I think what's going to swing it for me is, while I was editing the audio for Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, it was hard because I loved the music so much and I wanted to use every track. And for Odyssey, I kinda just picked one that fit. And by that I mean, I like the music better in 3D World, so I am going to keep it at my number 1 spot of the 3D ranking, so Super Mario Odyssey loses against this one, and it's getting sorted into the list. And for the final 2, I'm not gonna belabor the point, 1 Super Mario World, or 1 Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Bowser's Fury is an amazing game. I love it so much, the music is fantastic. Super Mario World is one of the best video games ever of all time. And so, for me, the choice is obvious. It is now 3D World, and then number 1, putting it back, Super Mario World at our number 1 spot. This makes our final list of the best Super Mario platformer games, definitively, mathematically, scientifically, geometrically, starting with D, number 18, Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels. In our C rank, we have 17, Super Mario Land, 16, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and 15, New Super Mario Bros. 2. In our B rank, we have 14, Super Mario Land 2, 13, Super Mario 3D Land, 12, New Super Mario Bros., and 11, Super Mario 64. In our A rank, we have 10, Super Mario Sunshine, 9, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 8, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and 7, Super Mario Bros. And in our S ranks, all perfect games in their own special and unique way, we have 6, Super Mario Galaxy, 5, Super Mario Galaxy 2, 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, 3, Super Mario Odyssey, 2, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and our ultimate, best Super Mario Bros. Game is 1, Super Mario World. Thank you so very much for watching. Super Mario in Review has truly been a labor of love. I concocted this idea back in March of 2021 after watching Barrett from Kinda Funny do them for The Legend of Zelda and Assassin's Creed. I started playing and reviewing the games a couple weeks later in April. I finished playing and writing in July 2022, recorded all the audio in August, and here we are in March 2023 with the final product. If you in any way enjoyed this series, please let me know. Leave a comment, leave a rating, and share this with anyone you might think would also enjoy it. And if you'd like more videos from myself, go ahead and subscribe. They won't all be about Mario anymore, but I hope you'll stick around. And to be notified of anything I'm doing, you can find all my socials linked in the description to stay up to date where I'm at Mario8th everywhere. Anyway, I truly hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.